Answer as you answer these questions and similar ones. Everyone can ask their own. We all know what we would say, but how many of us really know what we would do? In concrete situations like these, you already know, by your own internal signals, that externally directed people will tend to obey the image of authority and the laws only because the policeman wears a uniform. The lawyer knows better what to do in those cases. It is treason to disobey a superior in time of war, and if the President he says that Japanese Americans are a potential threat to our internal security, he must be right. There is no doubt that it is highly authoritarian to believe that everyone who wears a uniform, anyone who has a bombastic title or occupies a prestigious position, deserves to be obeyed without question, and the egalitarian antidote is to accept that everyone world, including you, regardless of positions and titles, can make mistakes and can give orders that are not worthy of being carried out and that deserve disobedience. Blind obedience to rules, laws, regulations, and symbols of authority undoubtedly forms the basis of externally directed authoritarianism. I do not mean by this, far from it, that people internally directed compulsively contravenes the law or habitually disparages authority, quite the opposite. When internally directed individuals coincide or sympathize with those in authority, they will instinctively pay the fines or become the great fighter pilots of the war, the secret agents who will gather the best evidence to unmask the one who is really a spy. Enemy. But they can do this only because, if the authorities ask them to do something that violates their own personal values, they have learned to ignore those orders and norms, and, when it comes to their aspirations for life without limits, you may be interested in practicing technique of ignoring pompous symbols of authority and absurd laws to the extent that you can, without harming anyone. The next time you are about to give in to authoritarians who are also symbols of authority, or to laws determined just because they are laws, remember that there is still a law in the state of Massachusetts that makes it illegal to sit on a round toilet. Organized religion, in some cases. Most of us are fully aware that official or organized religions, when they demand that their members blindly adapt to ethnocentric prejudices, rigid traditions or other general codes that dictate how individuals should govern their lives, when they teach to ignore the internal and personal sense of morality, they are vigorous external or authoritarian forces in our culture, catastrophically dangerous at times, as when they encourage witch hunts, religious wars and excessive fidelity to the cult. The irony of this almost universal consciousness of which we speak is that most authoritarian Catholics will say that almost all Muslims are a gang of fanatics who never think for themselves, who simply blindly follow the dictates of their ayatollahs. While most authoritarian Protestants will say the same of all Catholics, the most authoritarian Jews will say the same of all Christians, and authoritarian Muslims will say the same of all who follow the Judeo-Christian tradition. In this sense, perhaps it is the Buddha who can laugh last, unless he is very busy crying about the external orientation that so many so-called Buddhists have incurred. The point is that while you can legitimately see a lot of external direction in the organized religions of others, the more externally directed one is, the more likely it is that he will not see that external direction in his own church. As a man once asked us when there was still no organized religion that followed his doctrines, "Why do you see the straw in another's eye and not see the beam in yours?" Or how can you say to your brother, "Brother, let me take the straw out of your eye when you can't see the beam in yours?" Hypocrites, first remove the beam from your eye and then you will see clearly to remove the straw from your brother's eye. In other words, those with the largest beams of external origin in their eyes will be the last to recognize it, and also the first to see straws in the eyes of others. They will be the first to say abortion is valid or abortion is inadmissible, depending on what their religious leaders tell them, and they will also be the first to say, those people whose religions allow, or prohibit, abortion they are like little Hitlers, who blindly follow their leaders. As for religion and your inner psychological health, forget the straw or beam that may be in the eyes of others and just think about their eyes. Does your religion help you get in touch with what your inner cues immediately identify as your God? Does your religion encourage independent thinking, each individual consulting his own conscience, thinking freely about religious matters? Such religions and their members are magnificent and important pieces of any culture. But when it is intended to tell human beings that they should think as their religious authorities tell them to think, that they should do it this way because God tells them to do so, through the ecclesiastical authorities, and that they basically transmit the message that the good faithful must be robots without free will or animals or children who must be severely punished if they do not do what the Church commands, then organized religion emerges as another authoritarian bureaucracy that demands absolute surrender with external punishments and rewards. The more religions encourage the individual to be self-governing and take responsibility for his own conduct, to be moral and just to feel good about himself, the more likely it is that the mission of all unlimited religious leaders will truly be fulfilled. Big. Think about your own religion and ask yourself if a truly good and man-loving God could deceive you into the illusion of a free individual will and then sit back and establish/organized religion with rules that determine all the important decisions in your life. Ask yourself if your God, if he believes in one, believes in you, believes that you should think autonomously, act according to the highest morals, and tells you directly and personally, through your inner signals, that you will have more inner peace if it does, and if your religion is a truly beautiful and personal experience. If you find that you view your religion as primarily external in your teaching and orientation, remember that some of the worst injustices committed were perpetrated in the name of religion, and that your religion may still be internally and personally one of the most significant forces in your life, as long as it encourages the appreciation and use of individual free will. I am confident that this chapter has given you a clear idea of the extent to which members of our culture have come to be manipulated by external sign and reward systems, and I hope it has stimulated you in terms of your personal ability to be happy and to develop if you decide to explore, express and, above all, trust those inner voices and impulses that always try to guide us with our own lights, without the censorship or repression of anyone. If we think of Diogenes telling Alexander the Great that the only thing the great conqueror could do for him was not to take the light from him, and of John Gardner's comment that one of the best things we can do for creative names and women is not take the light from them, perhaps the basic message of this chapter is that, assuming we are all individuals of theoretically unlimited creativity, the best we can do for ourselves is not to take away our own inner light. Consider the following. A group of people has been abandoned in the jungle in the middle of the night, everyone has a flashlight. Assuming they are safe, there is no particular reason for them to stay together, they are there just to enjoy the roam until morning, when they will come back to pick them up wherever they are. Which ones focus the light forward and scan in all directions to explore what specifically attracts your curiosity? Which ones automatically position themselves behind others and leave their flashlights inactive, hanging from their belts, so that the only thing they illuminate is the ground they are crossing? Which ones say, the first thing we have to do is organize ourselves? Joe is one who has more experience in the forest, so it is best that we follow him? Which ones say, well, okay, all of you follow me, single file, come on, 1, 2, 3, 4. Who says, I want to go that other side, and if someone wants to accompany me, let's go side by side, so that we can illuminate more forest, discover more, and if someone finds something they can call others to share it with them. In short, which ones want to follow their own lights and which ones to block them? I leave it up to you to decide what kind of individual you want to be. Of course, you've always had that option, but chances are, you've never considered it as something you could decide on your own. Chances are, in many or most areas of your life you have simply stood in the queue, assuming that the guy at the top knew best where everyone should go. If so, you may want to think a little about what a man said before the religion that followed his teachings was born: you are the light of the world. No one lights the lamp and places it under the candlestick but on the pedestal, so that it illuminates the whole house. 1. We all say we love and value freedom, but too often we define our own freedom externally. We say, for example, that it is what the American political system provides us. We indulge too little in seeking and inquiring into life after that glorious experience of personal freedom to which only our own lights can lead us. Naturally, we want to be good family members, satisfied lovers, responsible citizens, and dedicate ourselves to meaningful work that improves the quality of life, and not just our own. But to enjoy life, freedom, and the pursuit of happiness, in these and all other sectors, one must begin by learning to trust internal signals. As Plato wrote, the man who makes everything that leads to happiness depends on himself and not on others, has adopted the best plan to live happily. A few simple and straightforward words spoken a few thousand years ago, and which are still simple and straightforward today: trust yourself. 7. Respect their superior needs. At the beginning of the last chapter I mentioned the call of your higher needs as a human being as one of the sources of internal signals that you had to learn to trust in order to achieve life without limits. By higher needs I mean those that are above your fundamental biological survival needs, such as food, water, a house, sleep and exercise, and I also include your needs for love, truth, beauty, work. Significant and many more than over the centuries have been admitted to provide human beings with the necessary impetus to become all that they can become. By calling these needs higher, I do not mean that they are to be placed above any of your fundamental needs as a human animal in any sort of priority order. You could argue that your animal needs are higher because you have to take care of them first and always in order to meet any of your other needs. On the other hand, you might argue that your higher needs for love, beauty, truth, etc., should be placed above your biological needs, if you conceive them as I do, as those needs whose satisfaction you can elevate you at your highest level or contribute significantly to your happiness. Furthermore, everything suggests that neglecting these higher needs can be as destructive in the long run as not eating, not sleeping, or not drinking can be in the short term. But why try to classify your basic human needs? There is no plausible reason, except that some of these needs tend to be forgotten and belittled at the expense of others. So, basically, calling some of your needs higher and others lower as a means of emphasizing the former or belittling the latter is a dangerous exercise in dichotomization that ignores your fundamental unity as a person, divides you in two and causes anguish and conflict. I want to call those needs that are above the biological survival needs higher, because they will help you to elevate you to higher and higher levels of life without limits, when you begin to consider them true needs that you must satisfy every day of your life. To avoid any misconceptions in assessing what I call basic needs and what I call higher needs, it is essential to conceive of all needs, the entire spectrum, from the need to eat to the need for beauty, goodness, and justice, as a network. A kind of trampoline. If you are jumping on it, it does not matter if it is the legs that are missing, or it is a string or the net. If either part fails, you will end up on the ground. For the same reason, if the support is firm, the ropes are strong and the net is as elastic and resistant as it should be, it is possible that you can jump as high as you want and do as many pirouettes as you want without fear of any part giving way. Your basic human needs can be the support, your higher needs should be the network. But try jumping on the net of the trampoline when it is on the ground or jumping in the middle of the support when there is no net and you will get an idea of how interdependent all your needs really are. Your superior needs as instincts. Psychological research has growing evidence that higher needs produce instincts just as powerful and just as necessary for survival and happiness as those born of your basic animal needs. You will recall that in the 5th chapter we said that instincts are reactions to the environment of a hereditary and unalterable character, which do not involve rational elements, they are immediate reactions of the organism to alleviate the corporal tension created by vital situations that demand basic animal reactions. Now I add that the ideas and feelings that accompany our immediate instinctual reactions when we neglect our higher needs, when we hear a lie or experience something that seems extremely obnoxious, are exactly comparable to our reactions when we are hit. Our body may not react so spectacularly, but in the whole of our person, body-mind, an immediate tension is created and there is an instinctive urge to relieve it. Regarding the lie, for example, we feel the need to say, "Wait a minute. That is not true." Regarding that thing that seems detestable to us, "This matter is getting ugly, we must try to solve it, or else, my God, this street is getting worse every day, we have to clean that empty lot, cut down that dead tree and plant another new one." The difference between your animal instincts and the instincts derived from higher needs is that if you repress your basic animal needs you will become ill or die of physical causes, whereas if you reject and repress your higher needs in equal measure, your mind will crumble and be. You are almost mentally dead, you will feel unable to control yourself and your destiny, as when you end up in an institution for the mentally ill or commit suicide in one way or another. In reality, repressing and rejecting higher needs is the basis on which all extreme forms of brainwashing are based to disintegrate and modify the mentality of their victims. The political prisoner sentenced to solitary confinement, who is continually deceived and denied any hope of justice, the one who has become a cult and who undergoes rituals designed to suffocate all the respect that the individual feels for himself, or is made to sit in a dark room and stay in it for 2 days, totally deprived of human company or from any external stimulus, the victims of the abuses of the psychological training of the sensibility, all of them suffer deprivation of the superior satisfactions carried to the extreme. If they are able to stand strong enough in the present moment and retain their faith in the meaning and value of life and come out of the trial with their self-awareness intact, or if they succeed in bending or destroying them to the point where they can then lead them like sheep, someone has intervened externally and interposed between them and their ability to satisfy higher needs to control their mind. With this in mind, higher needs seem to be those that give the basic orientations of life, rather than the sun and sky toward which plants grow. They show which is the way up, with regard to life without limits, and if you as a human being have no idea which way it is, you will be like that impossible rosebush that directs all its buds towards the most extreme corner. Dark that it can find and buries its cocoons in the ground. The thing is that simple, if you do not respect those higher needs that are your guide, you will disintegrate as an individual. But to find out what your higher needs are and how you can meet them, you don't have to go anywhere or do anything, all you have to do is identify how they warn and urge you with the same clarity as other basic instincts, such as sexuality or the self-preservation instinct. It is enough that you are connected to them. Your superior needs and how to meet them. Since our higher needs demand our individual and personal recognition, we have to speak to each other of them in very general and abstract terms, philosophical terms, actually, that indicate that although each of us has discovered/created his own idea of what the abstract ideal of love is, for example, we start from experiences very different from how we have understood it. It is very likely, therefore, that we disagree with the categorical decisions that others may make, in one sense or another, and that we question them, and that is why we need vague and general terms such as love, subject by definition to all kinds of different interpretations, so that we can talk to each other about those higher needs. But such vague general or philosophical terms mean little if we do not find means of making them meaningful in our own lives. I believe that the role that ideas such as love, truth, and beauty can really have for us will be better understood if we analyze a selected group of concepts that have indicated more directly to me how to appreciate what I identify as my higher needs, and how you could use them to increase your respect for your own higher needs. Don't forget that living without limits means allowing yourself more and more to be driven by those higher needs and recognizing them as absolute needs, rather than as secondary luxuries or rewards. Individuality. The need to create your own individuality is an instinct that governs all aspects of life, and the more it is rejected and denied, as in societies that tend to regiment everyone to adapt, dress, think and adapt, behaves just like everyone else, the more an insidious sense of sickness, boredom, and clumsiness looms over the minds of individuals. Individuality is not something one wishes to express purely or originally in itself, for its own sake. The higher needs of the individual are not intended to tell you to wear a big green pom-pom on your nose just to stand out from the crowd and show everyone that you are an individual being, a character. Individuality arises rather by accident, when the individual pursues to do whatever is in accordance with his convictions and feelings, dressing, cooking, talking, thinking, playing golf, painting a picture. But in the she individual, individuality as a whole ends up being cultivated when the individual respects his internal signals above all external signals that try to deprive him of his basic human right to individuality, to make him paint the same picture in the same way that they paint it. Everyone else, Answer a question exactly as everyone in the class is supposed to answer it, wear the same hat everyone else wears and don the same way. In my own life I have found that many others appreciated my individuality, the particular way I choose to do things, as much as they could appreciate theirs, while those who tried by all means to condemn my individuality and repress it were the ones who displayed the fewest clues of their own individuality, the ones that most resembled robots. Think of that elevator operator who looks at us contemptuously when we enter his first-class hotel at 7 in the afternoon wearing a t-shirt and jeans and go up in his elevator at the same time as a group of well-dressed clients. His gaze comes to say, "Gentlemen, after 5 o'clock in the afternoon in this hotel we do not wear that clothing." Isn't he the one who is dressed in the most meticulously correct uniform, without any individual details? He will never wear a flower on his lapel, and one of the most sullen and solemn people? If you greet him with a cheery "What's up?" you might say in a dry, cold tone, "Good morning, sir," or you might just grunt, but you won't respond positively to your cordial invitation. You to treat yourself as individuals. He fears his own individuality and that is why he fears yours as well. On the contrary, the elevator operator who values his individuality and appreciates the others in the same way, is the one who greets you as cordially as you to him. He likes to mix with people in t-shirts and jeans with those who are dressed in formal wear. He is the one who reminds you, the one who tells you a joke, the one who follows the thread of a conversation you had the last time, and he is the one who will wear a boutonniere, a scarf around his neck, a photo of your new granddaughter in the purse or any other touch or detail of individuality for the world to appreciate. Individuality is irrepressible to most people, and even in countries where individualism is strongly rejected, or in organizations where it is actively undermined, the instinctive need for it proves to be so strong that it emerges, even in ways subtle. It may show up in a piece of gold on the teeth, or in a tattoo, or in the special angle the soldier puts on the cap. It can manifest itself in those deep red flowery curtains on the window of that uniform and drab apartment block, or in the individual's special way of smiling, laughing, or dancing. But it bursts in where individuality bursts in, whatever the place in the world, whatever the situation, it is the sign of your own originality as a person who has never been before and will never be on this planet before, at least, on this planet. Moment, and you must respect his higher need to be that particular unique individual now, otherwise you will practically waste your life. Approach it this way. You weren't born in a test tube like a million more experimental animals of your generation, destined to undergo maximum control conditions in a laboratory so that some mad scientist can assign you to the control group. To be treated in exactly the same way and subjected to exactly the same environment, the same program and the same stimuli as the members of the experimental group, just for the sake of the experimental difference that the scientist wishes to introduce. You weren't born to be a laboratory rat, destined for someone to say about you tomorrow, "Well, this is a member of the control group," and you will see that you are in normal health, whereas half of those rats over there, those who were subjected to experiments with this new chemical, are sick. For that is precisely the consideration you have for yourself when you reject your need for individuality. You are placing yourself in the control group. At the same time, it basically denies and rejects a fact that no scientist, I hope, will ever be able to alter, that you were born at a certain time and at a certain place in human history where no other was born. You grew up in a way and with conditions different from those of the rest of the human beings who were born or may be born, and you have already created an individuality for yourself that is exclusively yours, that no other living being will ever be able to reproduce, for much that I pretend. The fact that fate gave birth to you, made you, and makes you live and will make you die as an incalculably complex and unique individual human being, is something that you can only reject and deny in your imagination. It is a reality that you can never erase. On the other hand, only by accepting your human destiny and appreciating the unique character of your individuality and that of others in its fullest sense, will you be able to achieve a holistic and limitless vision of yourself and react to all your life situations thinking, "No one has ever faced this specific situation before. As an individual, I am destined to make the most original and fruitful choices I can in this situation, for the benefit of myself and everyone else. My individuality, my personal freedom of choice and my responsibility, is a reality that I couldn't escape even if I wanted to. I have to respect my own individuality now, or I will lose it and become an externally controlled individual, as devoid of individuality as that lab rat in the experiments. In your obedience to your instincts for individuality in all fields, I believe you will discover, as I have discovered, that these instincts will lead you to a feeling of creative joy in all your activities. I respect. Respect means to consider yourself worthy of consideration, and also not to hinder or interfere, as when one respects another's need for privacy. From this, it will be evident that the need for self-respect and that of respecting those around us, at least, those who respect us, is something fundamental for the human being, because if one does not respect oneself himself, he is automatically classified as unworthy of consideration or as worthy of being held in low esteem, thereby causing everyone else to treat us badly. I spoke before that brainwashing and psychological control techniques in general depend above all on effectively attacking that sense of self-respect that the individual has, and that if this self-respect is lost, the individual it practically disintegrates. Few of us are subjected to such extreme attempts to eliminate that self-portrait during our lives, but we are all constantly involved in situations in which it is taken for granted that respect between individuals must be unequal. For example, many parents demand that their children respect them without question continuously, but they demand that their children earn their respect by doing what parents say is respectable. Many teachers and other symbols of authority also demand respect for themselves only for the position they occupy, while stressing that students and other subordinates have no right, as such, to be respected. For example, Richard Nixon, who demanded respect for the president while feeling perfectly justified in disrespecting student protesters and other homeless who did not like the way he did things, is a prime example. In fact, many commentators attribute Nixon's problems to a basic confusion that prevented him from seeing clearly whether he was actually the president or the presidency. In America, we sometimes come across police officers who tend to play this "you respect me, I don't respect you" game. They are the ones who, when they stop you for speeding, are not content with giving you a fine but tend to approach the car threateningly, demand the documentation with a mocking and contemptuous smile, treat you, in short, as if you were a criminal of the worst kind. They are, after all, the policemen who seem to want to incite you to show a small detail of disrespect, with the aim, you suppose, of being able to give you another fine, arrest you or something similar, for disrespecting an agent of policeman. They try to make it clear that that horrible crime you committed by narrowly exceeding the speed limit gives them a license to completely disrespect you as an individual, and they expect you to humble yourself, apologize, although, really, you should just say to yourself, "Sorry, I wasn't looking at the speedometer. I'll look more closely from now on." Perhaps you have already thought that respect between people is real respect, in the healthy sense, only if it is equal or reciprocal. Otherwise, it is just a tribute from one person to another. And the idea of demanding respect from someone is absurd. The father who demands respect from his children believes that he has to demand it precisely because he has not accorded them basic respect as human beings in the first place. If he had, the children would respect him as a matter of course, as something instinctive, and it would not be necessary for him to demand it. What such parents will gain from their demands are appearances of respect, but not genuine and heartfelt respect, and in the end, when the parental hold on their children begins to lose force, this false respect will be as useful as a gas can full of water when it's time to start the relationship all over again on a basis of true equality. And the same happens with respect for oneself. If you find that you have to demand that respect from yourself, it is because you have somehow forgotten the basic truth that all human beings, including you, are entitled to respect for all. Perhaps if someone shows you a continued lack of respect, you end up saying, "I have no respect for that person," but if you did, it should be in the context of, "I started by automatically granting respect to that person the same as to everyone else, but clearly that individual has no idea what true respect means. Does not respect everyone's similar need for respect, does not understand that basic human respect is not something that can be manipulated, eliminated, or refused. Furthermore, the difference between you sometimes, perhaps, saying about others, they don't inspire me the least respect, and saying about yourself, I don't feel the least respect for myself, is that you have a very control complete on your own thoughts regarding respect, and if you accept it as one of your highest human needs and the needs of all according to the ideas that I propose, you should never say to yourself, I have no respect for myself. To be a healthy organism, you must have that self-respect. If you deny yourself such respect, it will soon decline in every way. First, you will not eat properly, you will not take care of your body, you will lose interest in life, and finally you will end up being a sick individual. The instinct of respect is so essential that it applies to all of us, and yet most people who are truly ill, mentally and often also physically, do not really respect themselves. They disrespect each other in various ways, and consequently others do the same. Having respect is a basic need. If you don't believe it, try going to an institution for the mentally ill and look at all the people who live there permanently. Be aware of the effects of disrespect. Watch carefully that they become so mentally depressed that they break down. It begins when they are very young and other important and significant individuals treat them disrespectfully. Before long, they begin to believe those messages and are no longer able to function as healthy individuals. Belonging. The need to belong, to a community of human beings, to your own environment or to the world as a whole, in the sense that you feel at home in their world, is as vital to your life as food or food. Sleep. Human beings do not function well without a sense of belonging, of community spirit. Even in the case of the hermit or the mountaineer who wanders alone in the Rocky Mountains for months or years without end, if his sense of belonging is satisfied, it is because he feels that he belongs to the forests, the mountains, a certain part of the world, nature, and that part of nature belongs to him. Most of us, however, prefer, or are destined to do so as the planet becomes more populated, to forge membership in increasingly complex societies. It is very clear that this higher need can be denied and rejected in complex societies as well as in simpler situations. It is clearly seen in the outcasts, the vagabonds, the junkies, drug addicts, and others who cannot find a sense of belonging on the streets of our big cities, or in the elderly who wither away in nursing homes, and who they deteriorate and sink because they no longer feel like they belong to anyone else's world, or to their own. The opposite of belonging is marginalization, which, as any marginalized person will tell you, can be an unavoidable stage in the life of almost every individual. Sometimes you have to withdraw, to marginalize yourself even from some people, family, communities, or a country. But marginalization is only valuable as a step towards satisfying the need to belong to a certain place, to some other person, to another country, to another job or whatever. It is only constructive if it is a response to the call of your need to belong and to your best idea of how you might meet that need. In those for whom the marginalization of everyone and everything has become a way of life, you will notice suffering ranging from depression to anguish and even physical deterioration, often leading to hospitalization or death. The first stage in satisfying your need to belong is to ask yourself if you really have a sense of belonging to the world in the first place. When you pass by your street, you may say to yourself, yes, I am in the place where I belong, that bird sings for me, and my position is here. Listening to the song of that bird, there is Joe, he too belongs to this. Or you might say, I don't belong here. Right now, I should be in the office. I wish I went back to California. We are not from this neighborhood, our neighborhood is the one on the other side of town. Who is that type? Is he from here? Or other similar thoughts that indicate a chronic marginalization of his world. If you find that you are always rushing through life trying to find a place or community that you can really feel you belong to, it is because you have not accepted the basic fact that you belong exactly where you belong. You are now, in the sense that no one in this world has more right than you to be in it. Suppose you are a poor boy in ragged clothes walking through an upper-class neighborhood, dragging a mower behind him, looking for houses where they need to mow the lawn to earn a few pennies, and a guy in a Cadillac pulls up next to him and says, "Hey, kid, get out of here. You're not from this neighborhood." What is your reaction as you watch him drive away in your car? Do you think, "He's right and I'm not. I thought I could do it, that I could at least earn enough to buy new clothes, that I would get some regular work here, but I should never have come to this place, which I don't belong to"? Or maybe you say to yourself, "What the hell do you mean by saying I'm not from this neighborhood? Does it mean that I have no right to be on the surface of the earth, that if I don't have money to buy clothes better than the one that I am wearing at this moment, I must disappear from the world, that I must kill myself?" He has just walked away down the street, which is part of the surface of the earth and also a public road. Who is he to tell me that I cannot be here? I have as much right to walk down this street as he to drive through here. I belong to this world as much as he does. What I mean is that unless you start by accepting that you belong where you are right now, in the sense that you have an inalienable right to be in this world as much as any other individual, you are denying yourself the opportunity to meet your membership needs where you are now. If you notice that you are constantly saying to yourself, "I do not belong to this place, I belong to another," think that the problem is not that others have rejected you or are trying to prevent you from satisfying your need to belong, but that you have rejected yourself in what to belonging to the world refers. If you are willing to admit that you simply belong to your world, where you are now, first and foremost, and you have forgotten all the ideas like, "I was in the wrong place, I should have been born in the 17th century, you will be in willingness to meet your higher membership needs as you now perceive them for yourself. He is in a position to ask himself questions such as, "Why do I think I do not belong to this family, to this community, to this country?" You are in a position to identify those areas of life in which your needs for belonging could be met, determine the ones you really want to cultivate, and respond to your personal instincts for belonging when considering how to satisfy them. We all have an instinct for belonging, which moves us to feel important, to start meaningful relationships. And repressing them is as devastating to the body as denying it food or sleep. The difference is that the symptoms take a little longer to emerge. Affection and love. All parents who have cared for their children know the tremendous importance of affection and love for children, and the effect of extreme deprivation of affection in childhood are well known to all. The child who is fed and always changes on time, the one who sees all of the South satisfied basic animal needs, but the one who is never picked up, pampered, kissed, caressed, or played with, the child subjected to absolute deprivation of human contact and affection, will quickly languish, show signs of rejecting the world, become weird, you will lose your appetite, you will not want to eat or drink, and ultimately you may try to starve yourself. In less serious cases, in which parents treat their children without spontaneity, taking them and playing with them from time to time, but only for a few minutes, always in a hurry and with some irritation, the children will show signs of rejecting life, but they will live, and perhaps when they grow up they will overcome this deprivation and realize how important affection and love are to themselves and to others. If you retain the memory of how deeply deprived you felt, you can become the most caring and loving individuals in the world. But whether or not your inner child has lacked affection so far, you will still have to decide that you can have love and affection today and that you are not going to put it off any longer. Not only do you deserve love and affection, but they are absolutely essential to your survival. We all know people of whom we say, for example, "He is a very conscientious husband and father, but he is very unloving." Perhaps we hear comments of this type especially from people who talk about their own family, and the most usual thing is that the subjects are men, because, according to the female/male dichotomy, it is assumed that women are openly affectionate, especially with her children, but not the men. Men are the breadwinners, the protectors, the disciplinarians, the immovable rocks, and open displays of affection and tenderness are seen as signs of weakness or vulnerability. That is absurd, of course, and the irony of the matter is that, in my experience, men who respect their own emotional needs and allow themselves to caress, hug, kiss, etc., more than what traditional social customs dictate, are, without exception, stronger than those who rigorously follow the image of the male, at least in the sense that they are more at peace with themselves, they have a more balanced temperament, they are less irritable, they tend less to be enraged by trifles and to lose control. On the other hand, the individual who systematically suppresses his needs for affection, artificially marginalizes himself from his loved ones and, admit it or not, feels somewhat isolated from the world. As much as it is said, or I say to others, my son knows that I love him without the need for me to continually hug him, there is something irreplaceable in physical contact, something that allows us to really feel, to feel like members of a family, of a community, of the world. Animals know it very well. Cats that sleep snuggled up against each other do so not just because they are cold and need each other's body heat, but because they like the emotional warmth, say, that comes from feeling physically part of life. The dog that comes running to be caressed does not pose nonsense such as other dogs will think that I am weak if I do. But the curious thing about humans is that, although almost everyone respects the need for affection of the dog, the cat, or the canary, it is not customary to consider that the father should throw his arm over the son's shoulder when they leave the field after of the party. You can pet the dog and indulge in the dog's displays of affection, perhaps because everyone knows that dogs need affection, after all, they are just animals. The conclusion of all this is that what we have to do as animals is to treat ourselves and our loved ones as well as we treat our dogs, and with this we will discover very soon that the needs for affection that we all feel are well satisfied. The need to love and to be loved is something more problematic than the need for affection or affection. While affection is a means of expressing love towards others, and comes naturally once we want a person as friend or partner, or whatever, love involves other questions related to the personality of the individual. Can I find, in the first place, someone to love and who loves me? How do I know whether or not I really love that person, and if that person really loves me? It seems that your ability to satisfy the need to love and be loved is only partly up to you, and if no one else chooses to love you or be loved by you, there is little you can do to resolve it. The other or the others will keep you deprived of love. That kind of attitude is useless, because there is no benefit whatsoever from worrying about finding people to love or trying to make others love us. There is no point in admitting that the satisfaction of any of your higher needs depends on someone other than yourself. And the only thing you do psychologically when you think that the satisfaction of your love needs depends on the love whims of others is to accuse others of the lack of love in your life, resign yourself to it and pretend that you can do nothing to solve the problem. Affair. But luckily, if you think a little about love, you will see that, as much as our society emphasizes that you must find the perfect man or woman, of which there is one in a million, whom you would gladly love, no matter how much they have taught him to peel daisies and recite, "He loves me, he does not love me," no matter how many popular songs he has heard, in which he repeats himself, "Don't you want someone you can love? Wouldn't you love to love someone?" You would do well to find someone to love, by many parents who have heard their children say, "Make sure he really loves you before you commit," and even if there are a lot of people, if he spends enormous amounts of time and energy pondering how he can win over someone else whom he thinks he loves, the fact is that our capacity to love and to be loved depends only on us. Let's analyze the myth of the perfect couple. The idea that the man or woman whom destiny or God has marked to marry you is lost somewhere in the world like a needle in a haystack, and that he must be lucky enough to bumping into that partner who is destined for you, who has to acknowledge him or her and he or she to you and accept both that they love each other, before you can begin to love and be loved in the erotic/romantic sense. Even supposing it were true that there is only one perfect partner out there for everyone, what any widower, for example, who has a happy second marriage will tell you is absurd. If you do not know how to love and to be loved when you meet that person and cannot learn, no love between you will be possible. And if that person does not perceive that you know how to love and be loved or wants to learn more about it with him, each one will follow his path in a short time. After that, you can say, "That bastard rejected me," but what actually happened? You set out to find that special and unique person, and instead of asking, "What can I learn now about love with this person?" you have been worrying primarily all the time thinking, will it or will it not be him? How do I know if I really love him? If I love him, how can I make him love me? What if I love him and he doesn't love me? That would break my heart. You were so eager to reach the last petal of the daisy and find out, or decide, if he wants you or not, that you have forgotten to water the flowers. You have been so concerned about the status and future of the relationship. Who has been mentally prevented from actively cultivating it? By pretending that love is a kind of flying saucer that may or may not fall from the sky at any moment and transport you to a magical world of ecstasy, you have rejected its basic nature of the art of living in the present moment, of working and playing now, an art like dance, which, if you like and practice it, you can exercise it with any couple and at any time. The individual who cannot find someone to love, who cannot find someone to love him, is like the one who says he wants to dance and does not find the right partner, someone with whom to turn automatically, in a magical and effortless way, doing all the steps and movements you've never bothered to learn to do. Perhaps it can help you better understand what I mean by thinking of those people you know who have said or heard others say, "Everybody loves you." Do you think it could be because the individual was so lucky that he fell into an environment in which there were the most suitable people for him? Do you think that if you were suddenly deposited in a strange culture on the other side of the world, the people there would not be the right ones for you, and no one could love you? Of course not. Everyone loves that person because, first of all, that person loves himself and, moreover, he knows how to love everyone in one way or another. He knows how to be considerate in any human relationship without worrying about it, and it is possible that worrying too much about that, with endless doubts and constant futurization, is what suffocates many possible love relationships, shows that he respects others, makes others feel comfortable with him, he knows how to open up without being suspicious or fearful of being rejected, which he is not at all concerned with. About rejection and the fear of rejection, the lover without limits will say, who wants to run after someone who does not want to dance with you and rejects you when you ask, when there are so many people in the world who would really love to dance? And he will draw the conclusion that the person who rejects him does not intend to do anything to him, all he does is admit his own inability to love and to be warm and cheerful and upbeat in that particular situation, primarily rejecting himself. The moral is that loving and being loved is not something that happens to you, but a creative art that you must practice with others with an endless variety of possibilities and pathways, from daytime friendships to romantic relationships. /erotic for life. Whether your needs for love and affection are met in your life, at least in your adult life, depends only on whether or not you really want to dance, and whether you really want to learn how to do it. You have to accept, of course, that a partner cannot learn to dance without stomping his foot from time to time, and that from time to time you may have a really strange partner who seems to just want to step on you, and who may reproach you for placing your foot below, instead of trying not to make the same mistake again, a couple with which you simply do not feel like trying to keep trying. But if you are up for it, make sure you will discover that there are many, many people who would like to become friends with you, and many are also willing to try their luck in a romantic/erotic relationship. As long as you keep in mind that the dance has nothing to do with the pretense of acquiring a husband or a wife, of getting a lot of friends, of directing your children in everything, that only supposes that you learn to improvise a certain love, a certain affection, a certain friendship or whatever seems appropriate with whoever you are at the moment, and recognize that each dance is an opportunity to cheer up, to improve yourself, to dance with more inspiration than you will never. Discover that your needs for love and affection know very well how to satisfy themselves. You must already know how important your need to love and be loved is to you. If you are saying, well, that's not that important, I can do without it if I have to, or I've tried, but it's not worth that much effort, or even, like the title of a satirical song, love sucks. He must know, deep down, that he is rationalizing, grumbling fruitlessly about supposedly green grapes, refusing to dance because sometimes it means 1 or 2 stomps. He must suspect that he does not know how to love himself in both senses. You do not have love for yourself, which is almost the same as respect for yourself, nor do you know how to love others. If so, if you feel a palpable lack of love in your life, and consequently of affection, as one follows the other, forget whether others love you or not, and to try/determine whom loves and who does not, because it is just another way of abusing the love/hate dichotomy. Just think of a way to have a little fun, a fun of the best possible genre, with a friend, a lover, your parents, or your children, the stranger with whom you exchange a few words in the subway or in the store, anyone with who stumbles. Let your love for yourself and humanity try to simply unfold itself whenever it wants, and you will discover that love is truly everywhere, always, pure. Everyone who really wants to dance, from the newborn in the arms of his mother, to the 95-year-old man from the nursing home, whom everyone loves. Meaningful and creative work. We all need to feel productive and useful as human beings. This does not mean that we have to work for others to feel satisfied in life, but the feeling of being useful, of doing something creative, of undertaking some task and completing it, is something essential and basic. It is a basic necessity. If we belittle and repress this need, the consequence is boredom and the most painful and exhausting human experience, lack of interest. People who have lost interest in life break down. They have no purpose and become a burden to themselves and to the society in which they live. They suffer from severe depressions, they despise themselves and they begin to experience physical symptoms of all kinds and end up dying of this disease. Yes, don't hesitate, we have a clear instinct that drives us to be productive and to undertake meaningful work activities. Those who do not follow this instinct condemn themselves to a life of boredom and the possible immobilization that comes from inactivity. In this sense, every living human being wants to work, at least in principle, and only if one is bogged down for too long in a job that is excessively tedious, puts too much pressure on us, or does not give us the internal feeling of doing something useful. For someone, we can think, I don't want to work anymore. I want to retire and just dedicate myself to having fun and always being calm. If you don't believe that, I firmly believe that you misjudge yourself, and you will soon find out that this is the case if you withdraw from all work activities. Life will begin to seem empty, you'll start to feel worthless, and after a while you'll be looking for cool things to do, whether it's volunteering at a hospital, taking local kids to a game, or to the circus so your parents can have some free time, or try to clean the empty lot at the end of the street of garbage. The deep need that human beings have for meaningful work can be seen in the physically and/or mentally handicapped. However serious their deficiencies are, all these individuals can do something, they always want to do something, and the difference between those who are given the opportunity to do something and those who are not, is the same as between day and night. Those who are denied the possibility of work and are given some trivial or circumstantial work to silence them and warn that they are commanded to do it just to keep them busy and not disturb, become resentful, frustrated and depressed individuals. Their deficiencies worsen, their physical condition worsens and, like anyone else who is denied the possibility of work, they can go insane and become inactive and chronically dependent on others. But those who are offered something to do, or find it themselves, and are helped in everything necessary to carry out what they undertake, develop as individuals in an extremely interesting way, and almost everyone will tell you that it is not theirs deficiency, what they regret, but the fact that this deficiency could cause them to deny them the right to work, pride and self-respect, which is derived from contributing something to society and earning a living. In general, these individuals appreciate the need to work vastly more than others and are struck by the idea that someone might ever consider the need to do meaningful work as non-fundamental to being human. In addition, they are able to make sense of practically any work they can do, and it is difficult for them to understand that the fully capable ones continually protest their work and think, wait until you have an accident and get sick or something like that and you cannot continue doing that job. You will protest twice. Another group that deeply appreciates the need for meaningful work is the elderly, those who were forced to retire at age 65, when they know they can continue working for years. Groups like the Grey Panthers and other similar associations of senior citizens have been repeating the following more and more lately: if we are going to be denied the right to work, why don't they bury us at the age of 65? These individuals have clearly and dramatically seen the difference between those in forced retirement camps who have not been able to find meaningful work after being abruptly kicked out of their professions in their 65th year, and those who have their own business, from which no one can kick them out, or those who work in sectors to which forced retirement does not apply. They know very well that the owner of the hardware store, the lawyer, or any other healthy and lucid professional with the capacity to work at 80 years old, could very well have died if they had forced him to retire at 65. For them, and for me, it is consummate hypocrisy that members of Congress, or any other legislative body, who pass retirement laws for others have never passed the same laws for themselves and insist on their right to continue working in Congress at 80 and 90 if you wish. Whether or not your work is meaningful to you in the sense in which we are talking, is something that only you can know, but first he has to ask it seriously, which very few people do. If you are a teacher, or a doctor, or simply a father or mother or are working in any sector in which your service to society is, or at least should be, absolutely clear and evident, you may not have serious problems saying, of course my work is significant. But if you are a worker who has to put up so many buffers a day, if you work in advertising and have to do so many weekly announcements, or if you are an employee of a casino, your answer may not be so blunt. The worker may say, well, it is significant in the fact that people need shock absorbers in cars. I am certainly doing something useful and necessary, but the work itself is quite boring, it gives me very little opportunity to exercise my wits or the creative capacity, so for me it is not very significant, of course. Or you can also say, well, the work is quite monotonous, but I always find half an hour to exercise my wits. For example, when the machine breaks, I always find the best and fastest way to fix it, and sometimes, I make suggestions to improve the process or the product, creating better and safer working conditions. Yes, I would say that, on the whole, it is quite significant work. The advertiser may say, it's a nonsensical job. Most of the junk we advertise is useless junk that we try to create a demand for by luring fools around with these stupid ads. I'm only doing it for the money. Otherwise it's a complete waste of time and talent. I've heard some advertisers say this in these same words. Or you can say, well, I think advertising does a valuable service by giving the public information about products that may be of interest to them, and while some products are not the best, there are also some that I think are excellent. I try to be as original and creative as possible in the task of informing the public about such products with advertisements. I think I am bringing positive things to advertising, and for me that is very significant. The casino employee may say, of course it is an absurd job. All I do is make money from people so that the casino benefits. It is interesting to me, because I see very varied people, I see how each one thinks, but I think it doesn't contribute anything to society, or you can say it's an important job, yes. I find it fascinating and, as far as what it can contribute to society, well, people are going to play everyone anyway, and here at least the taxes paid by the casino go a long way to subsidizing the state's education budget. As I said before, if your calling doesn't seem meaningful to you, you have two choices: find a way to make it meaningful, or drop it and move on to something that you know can make it meaningful. This last route may require a certain amount of patience, some risks, some retraining or learning new skills and knowledge, some financial sacrifices. In addition, you may face some disapproval from others who cannot understand why you are abandoning what seems safe to them to pursue what you want to undertake, those critics who seem to believe, in reality, that if you make enough money you can, of course, one way or another, satisfying all your human needs, and it doesn't matter whether you consider your work meaningful or not. But if you appreciate the basic need for meaningful work, as a vital need for yourself and everyone else, you know that if your work doesn't make sense, you won't have real security, and no matter how much money you earn, it won't make up for the void in it. His life. Amusements and distractions. If you think of those people you know or know who have lived very fruitful and positive lives for long periods of time, you will find that they all respected your higher needs for self-renewal, restoration, and spiritual refreshment that are born out of fun. Winston Churchill found painting the perfect way to turn his back on the world's problems for a little while. Woody Allen played the clarinet at a club in New York City once a week. Many prestigious scholars are, for whatever reason, voracious mystery novel eaters. Whatever form of distraction you choose, be it chess or volleyball, field trips, or antique restoration, it is essential that you satisfy your biological need for regular distraction. If you think you can do without it, especially if you are a work addict to the point, due to your need to start point 1 prepare the next court case at the same time the previous one ends, for example, of not being granted never a break, your work will suffer because the law of diminishing returns will inevitably affect you. You can work 12 hours a day, but in the last hours your performance will decrease, you will lose your ability to think clearly, and you will be lucky if you manage to get a good 4-hour work hour from hitting your head against the wall. If you continue like this day after day, you will find that you are getting slower and clumsier, and that even your first hours of work in the morning will not be as productive as they should be. You will later discover that your thought begins to wander, trying to take that rest that it denies you. You will be surprised staring at the window with your eyes rolling. He will say to himself, "Come on, that's enough. Let's get to work," but minutes later he will be surprised again, staring at the window again. If at that moment he does not hear the internal voices that say, "What the hell are you trying to do to me? I am not a machine, you know, I can continue to function the same, just by pressing the start button. I want to go for a walk in the park or something like that right now," you will keep sinking more and more, thinking, "What an unproductive day today. Now I will have to spend working all night." You will reach the limit and they will end up having to take you to a hospital or institution for the mentally ill or some other place where you will have a chance to put all the pieces back in place. In fact, there is evidence that much of the process of intellectual creation occurs unconsciously, if you accept that term, when one is amused or distracted. Henri Poincaré, the great French mathematician, had been racking his brains for days with a series of complex problems. Would tell later. "It was when I left Scene, where I lived then, to take a geological excursion sponsored by the School of Mines. The changes that the trip introduced made me forget my math work. Arriving in Coutances, we got on a bus to go to a place that I do not remember. The moment I stepped onto the ladder the idea occurred to me without anything in my earlier thoughts seeming to pave the way for it to emerge. I thought that the operations I had used to determine fusion functions were identical to those for non-Euclidean geometry. I didn't check the idea, I wouldn't have had time. So I took my place on the bus and continued the conversation I had already started, but I felt absolutely safe. When I returned to Scene I checked the result calmly. There are even more famous examples, such as Newton under the apple tree and Archimedes in the bathroom. So if you think your work is improving by denying any distractions, think it over carefully. Whatever your job, whether you are a housewife struggling with 5 little ones all day, or a construction worker obsessed with the idea that he has to take advantage of every minute he has available, or a political candidate with a completely covered activity program for the next 4 months, your mind and your body will rebel if you do not give them the opportunity to completely turn your back on the problems and activities to which you are always dedicated and indulge in something else. With the simple purpose of having fun. Accompanying the basic need to work and feel productive is the instinct to relax and slow down and be able to remove all pressure. That instinct that moves you to relax is necessary because otherwise you would end up perishing a victim of pressure and fatigue. If you lack the ability to relax, you are exposed to various diseases, including hypertension, ulcers, heart conditions, rashes, cramps, nervous tics, etc. Your body knows that excessive pressure can be fatal, and consequently you are fully equipped with the ability and desire to withdraw from oppressive situations and enjoy leisure. If you think this is not an instinct, try to imagine how you could survive if you did not have an internal mechanism to tell you when you are exhausted. He would continue working until he passed out. Unfortunately, many people have ignored this internal instinct and have been destroyed by it. You can have a much more perfect connection to your absolute need for fun and relaxation if you trust your instincts when you sense that you are simply too harassed. Whatever you do, even if you reject it and ignore your instinct to relax, it will not abandon you. Creativity. If asked to think about their higher human needs, many people would mention some things that I have mentioned, such as love, or meaningful work, but I think that few would include creativity, above all because the creative/non-creative dichotomy is something that is very present in our culture. You can hear phrases like, "So and so is very creative, I'm sure he will be an artist when he grows up." I am not very creative. Creative people are different from most. To be creative you have to be a little crazy. From thinking in this way there is only a very short step to concluding that only a select few creative geniuses should attempt to be creative, thinking that creativity manifests itself only on museum walls, between the covers of books, and so on. And that it would be pretentious and even stupid for one to aspire to creativity. How could it be a universal human need if so few people are in a position to satisfy it? Naturally, this cannot be so, because if everyone classified themselves as non-creative, there would be no originality and we would always end up watching movie reruns, always doing things the way we do now, thinking, speaking, teaching, etc. In the same way always, which would mean that the human species would die of boredom after 6 months. Luckily, this is not going to happen, because creativity is a deeply ingrained instinct, and if we open our eyes wide and look at the things that surround us, and that people have created, from today's newspaper to slides and ramps from the United Nations playground, to the Apollo spacecraft and anything else man-made, you will be in awe of human creativity. Actually, the opposite of creativity is simple imitation, so the only means we have to avoid being creators is to slavishly imitate others always, in the extreme case, always follow someone else around and imitate whatever make. In another sense, the opposite of the creative spirit is the destructive spirit, maliciously wanting to destroy all the good, valuable, and beautiful that others have been able to do or to act destructively in human relationships. To avoid destructiveness, we have to be creative in our personal thoughts about ourselves and the whole world, and to start that process we have to start by avoiding imitating the ideas of self-destructive individuals, and there is no way to imitate the mental processes of self-destructive individuals. Really creative individuals, because there is no formula for being original. Therefore, I believe that avoiding blind imitation or thoughtless conformity is the key so that we can all satisfy our needs for creativity and reach the vital heights of our unlimited creative capacity. The first step for you to identify your innate creativity is to keep in mind that it is an expression of your individuality, always so present, how your shadow may be, that it will follow you everywhere. It comes out in subtle ways even if you try to reject and deny it. It springs up and shows up when you instinctively need it, when it has no chance to hinder its emergence, such as when you automatically add the right ingredients to your homemade soup or come up with a gameplay on the go, or help victim of a car accident. Some might say, that's not creativity, that's just good Yankee ingenuity, but I would say then, why do we always talk about the old Yankee ingenuity, and never about the new Yankee creativity? Ingenuity is a form of creativity. Weren't the inventors based on it, and wouldn't we call Thomas Edison a creative, for example? The point is not to forget that both ingenuity and other talents you can be proud of are different from creativity, because the distinction is meaningless, unless you need me to explain how apples and apples are different from fruit. The oranges. Instead, you should concentrate on examining all the activities in your life in which creativity emerges or wants to emerge, as the opposite of imitation, and I am sure that you will discover it in all your activities. The only thing you have to do to give it free rein in any activity, cooking, playing with the children, fixing the car, in your profession, decorating the house, writing a letter, absolutely anything you choose, is to stop for a second and wondering, how much of what I'm doing here is just thoughtless imitation? If I set my imagination free to see how it could be done better, how I could make them more beautiful, and then think about which of my fantasies are achievable and how, who knows? What could I do? That's the basic thing about creativity, which makes it such a vital human instinct, the fascination and expectation of never knowing what the hell you're thinking is going to come up with next time. What makes creativity work is accepting the offers of the imagination just as you accept the shells that locate your eyes on the beach. Of all that vast sea of shells, you will only notice a few. Others, you may want to take them and examine them a bit. With others, he will have fun throwing them as far as he can, into the sea. Others will take them home and have them there for a few weeks, and some may want to clean them, make a necklace out of them, frame them, and even keep them forever. This is exactly how creative writers work. They open the doors of your thinking to the suggestions of your imagination. Since they have to prepare their thinking so that it shapes their ideas by turning them into works, their thinking will then choose suggestions for concrete works and, whether they are at the work table or fishing somewhere, or getting on a bus, or even sleeping sometimes, if your imagination finds a shell that demands to be picked up, it will immediately rush forward, focus on it, look at it in the light for a moment, place it in memory, and end up turning it into writing. This is not a process that may seem strange to you. You do the same when you open up to creative possibilities in anything. Think for a moment about those parts of your life or those things that you have done and that you have considered more creative and ask yourself if your thinking has not worked that way. Suppose you consider yourself a person with great creative capacity as a cook. That means you don't always follow the cookbooks, you don't stick to repeating the same menu in 2-week cycles, and you don't do anything else that indicates compulsive imitation. You also don't make hot dogs, some ice cream, a pickle, lemon juice, hot peppers, beer, and crackers in a saucepan and have it done to see what it turns out. You can often use other people's recipes, some of your old favorites and some new ones that look promising, but if you do, the recipes in your collection are likely to be full of annotations, variations, and substitutions that you have tried in the past. So the way you do it now is a highly original variety of paella, Cantonese chicken, or whatever. The more recipes you have tried and tested, the more you have learned about which ingredients complement each other and in what ways, and the more confident you will be when improvising, so that when you focus on the task of making something without a recipe and open your imagination to any suggestion, you can go through the entire inventory of ingredients and spices in the house, make a few trial and error choices, start with what you are sure you want, try it and ask yourself what the dish asks or needs to. Your thinking will then make other suggestions, some of which you can simply reject. Do not mix the cream with the lemon juice, unless you want it to be cut. Others you can try and compare with the normal aroma of the dish, reject them, decide to try a little something else, and so on, following the process of highlighting and rehearsing the inspirations you have, choosing the ones you want for the dish, using them in the right proportion, cooking everything until it is well done, giving it the final touch and taking it out on the table. If an uncountable number of chefs had not exercised their creativity in this way throughout this century, if all had limited themselves to following the first recipes that were devised, we would still follow these instructions in a compulsory way. Take a freshly hunted whole antelope and throw it into a good fire. If you have thought about your own life experiences, which you have been most creative in, you have probably identified them not only as some of the most intense living now experiences of your entire life, but also as the ones that produced things, actions, or relationships that you like to remember the most, and for which you would most like to be remembered. At the same time, those experiences in which you have been most destructive have been those for which you would least like to be remembered, and in which you have been most imitative are those that you have already forgotten or that you would not mind having forgotten. If you reject that higher and basic need that you have for creativity and opted for imitation and submission to what has already been done by others, he would become an automaton, but with all the depression, anguish, frustration, and self-loathing that comes from trying to suffocate that creative genius that is in its interior. If, on the other hand, you follow my advice from the first chapter and try to learn more about the way in which you have operated in the past, when you have been most creative, instead of brooding over the ways in which you may have stifled your creativity, you will see that you may have been in the past. If you observe others and learn more about their creativity, and if you decide to give freedom to your creative instincts whenever they suggest original ideas, you will soon discover that in your own personal way you are as creative as anyone without limits who has ever lived on this planet. Justice. Can you recall the first time you suffered what you now remember as a great injustice or witnessed another? Someone may have told your parents or a teacher a lie about you that resulted in a beating or an hour of punishment after school. Maybe the neighborhood bully hit his best friend for fun. Maybe your father didn't get a job because he was black. Whatever it was, how instinctive was his reaction? How long did it take to feel it? How strong was the sense of rejection you felt? To what extent did you wish you could correct this unfair situation? It seems very common these days, it seems, that people reject their instinctive needs for justice for themselves and for others, saying, anyway, the world is unfair and nothing can be done to avoid it. Just look at how many injustices they are committed every day everywhere. It is very likely that after saying such a thing he will reason, whether in public or not, as follows: injustice is the norm in this world, and I will not harm myself by trying to be more just than others. I will be continuously crushed and trampled if I do. I may not be able to stop myself from being crushed and trampled on at times, but I can catch up with others if I crush and trample others the same way they do me. This is the reasoning the unscrupulous mechanic uses when charging a corporate executive with $500 for unnecessary or never-made repairs. The same reasoning used by the unscrupulous executive of a credit company when he approves the loan of $50,000 that the mechanic has requested, knowing perfectly well that he has not read the diabolical clause in small print, and when he seizes the mechanic's workshop. This is the reasoning that everyone makes when he decides that it is justified to take advantage of others to make up for what they have done to him, make up for his own sense of injustice by being unfair to other innocents. If you also decide that you can really get ahead in this competitive game according to the real rules and plunder others in advance, thinking that they would not hesitate to do it with you, if they could, trying to plunder more people than the one who plundered you to you, you would undoubtedly lose all contact with your basic instincts for justice, and the consequent chain of paranoid aggressive reactions could lead you to complete illegality and delinquency, to fraud, embezzlement, theft, and worse. There is no doubt that the world is full of injustices, all of which are instinctively offensive to the individual who respects his own need for justice. But, first of all, the unlimited individual does not accuse the world because there is injustice in it. Second, he will not accept that there is naturally so much injustice in the world, and that he is unnatural if he does not want to accept his share of injustice in his dealings with the world. Third, he doesn't think the world would stay that way if enough individuals wanted to change it. And finally, fourthly, you do not allow your instinctive disgust at injustice to upset, confuse, or immobilize you, because you know that after that instinctive and momentary reaction of outrage to the situation, your creative sense of justice will suggest what you can do about it if you can do anything. If the answer is something, anything, you will not waste time or energy to curse the world for the fact that it is injustice, but it will to act on immediately. And you won't curse the world or yourself if you can't do anything about it. The best way to lose the innate instinct for justice is to consider that justice is decided by the courts, the police, your boss, or any other symbol of authority. Your reaction may then be, if they call that justice, true justice does not exist. But the best lawyers, the best policemen, and the best bosses in the world will tell you that justice is just something they try to achieve as best they can within their own limitations. The best jurists in the world, or the most creative ones, will also tell you that when the moment comes to pass a sentence there is and cannot be an authority superior to their own consciences, according to the information they have received due to their own life experience trying to do justice in the past. In other words, those who have heeded the call of their own inner sense of justice so deeply that they have consecrated their lives to it are the first to admit that ultimately one must return to the original source, to the childlike source. An instinctive need for justice and a visceral response to fairness in a particular situation. Your need for justice is not a need for justice to be done to you and others all the time. If it were, you would be right in concluding that the world as it is could never satisfy anyone's need for justice. Rather, it is the need for you to respect your own sense of justice, to cultivate it, and affirmed it in situations where you can now say, what the hell, justice doesn't really exist, so I'll just let it go. For example, you may have found yourself in situations similar to the one I saw myself in a few years ago, when a mistake in a Ministry of Finance computer caused them to charge me a small sum of money that I obviously did not owe. In the end, after numerous letters and phone calls, I was able to get officials to admit it was a mistake, but they didn't seem willing to stop the computer from sending me bills, or they might not be able to stop it. My accountant, the Treasury officials, my family, my lawyer, advised me to pay the bill since it was very little money, forget about the computer and consider the matter settled. They told me that if I provoked the Treasury officials I would expose myself to a very rigorous review of my accounts, in which they would try to make sure that my stubbornness cost me more money in the long run and, of course, the matter would bring me more headaches of what was really worth it. No doubt anyone who finds himself in such a situation will admit that it is an injustice. The important thing about the case is, do we have to fight to defend justice or should we forget it? What will make you feel better in the long run, saying, fighting will only mean a waste of time, and time is precious to me, or saying, standing up for a principle and getting justice done in this case is one of the most valuable uses I can make of my time, and it will give me a lot of satisfaction when I win. I decided to fight. The idea of giving in seemed inconceivable to me. I did not like being told to leave my position just because it would be easier for all those affected, and I made it clear to my accountant and attorney that they were not being paid for advising me to dispense with my personal need for justice. Yes, they believed that that was their job. I would find another accountant and another lawyer right away. After many efforts and tribulations, someone from the Ministry of Finance fixed the computer and the error was finally corrected. They did, yes, a more careful review of my file, but it was of no consequence. Terrible. Knowing very well that I had nothing to hide, I didn't care if they looked closely at what I was doing. I was not afraid of a careful review, because I am an honest and sincere human being. And, of course, I will not abandon my principles, which are very important to me, no matter how expensive it may be. It is principles and not money that matter to me in life. And the matter did not seem, in any way, a waste of time. The truth is that I really enjoyed it. This is nothing more than an example of satisfaction of the need for justice, which is not at all like the situation in which, for example, a witness to a serious crime finds himself, who knows that a person is going to be convicted who is innocent and has to decide to step up and tell what he knows, even if doing so endangers his safety and that of his family, but the principle is the same. You can either respect their sense of justice or you can try to ignore it and repress it. But believe me, if you decide not to respect him, you decide not to respect yourself, and you will soon find yourself wondering how worthy and dignified the life you lead is. For the limitless individual, there is nothing so basic and meaningful in life as seeking justice. You can happily commit yourself to getting the approval of a new law that prohibits any kind of common injustice, or you can work tirelessly for civil rights, electoral reform, nuclear disarmament, human rights, or whatever cause you consider necessary. You can bring more justice, more peace, and more harmony to the world, not because you are blinded by the mirage that you are going to solve all the world's problems or eradicate injustice, but simply because you enjoy responding fully and faithfully to one of your most important needs as human being: truth. Whether you recognize it or not, your mind functions naturally and in principle based on one essential principle, which is to offer you important truths for whatever situation you find yourself in. Truth, as your own thinking interprets it, does not mean never to make a mistake, which is impossible, nor does it mean never to tell a lie, because sometimes it is inevitable to tell it. It means, in fact, always acting according to your loyal know and understand. What your thinking seeks are contradictions within the entire fabric of your mental activity. It is the fastest and most accurate computer that exists, and more, much more, the flashing orange contradiction, clarify incongruity lights and the red false, or supposedly false, lights flash alerting you with incredible speed and accuracy. Let's take an extreme example. Imagine spending a week in the company of people who always lie. Where is the toilet paper? It's in the closet. I do not see it. It's because I cheated on you. It's not there. Well, where is it? It's on the sideboard. I do not see it. I just lied to you. It's not on the sideboard. Well, where is it? What happens is that there is no toilet paper. That's true. It's not a lie. He may laugh. But after such a week, he would no doubt come to the conclusion that he was not in the company of human beings, and in real life it doesn't take long with chronic liars, con artists, and phonies to develop a chronic distrust of humanity, including yourself, leading to paranoia, depression, inertia, and panic. You will find that you are always furious, that you are unable to communicate with others, and you will soon begin to doubt even yourself. If you maintain excessive contact with liars, you will come to hate them and hate yourself, you will lose health, you will lose interest in life. For those who have spent years in antiquated prisons, surrounded by liars and phonies, it was extremely difficult to regain some confidence in mankind and even in themselves. Continuous contact with this type of activity has effects similar to contact with uncontrolled bacteria that slowly corrode the body until it can no longer function. Yes, the truth is absolutely necessary to survive, it is an instinctive higher need. And the unlimited individual is first and foremost a sincere and honest person. He opposes falsehood, he does not distance himself in his relationships, he never tries to be evasive with others or tries to deceive them. And this sincere attitude towards life stems from his determined fidelity to the truth and from the need we all have for it to survive. What do you detest about so many politicians, bureaucrats, great businessmen, or executives of the great unions, salesmen, etc.? The fact that they appear to be lying to us, and that the truth is so unimportant to them in their regular dealings with the public. When an institution reaches the point of completely abandoning the truth, the inevitable result is chaos. Truth is necessary for both our social and individual structures to survive. The unlimited individual seeks the truth in all his companies. The need for truth is so strong in him that he will do his best to achieve it. He is not moved by power, he is moved by the need he feels for the truth to be the cornerstone on which his culture rests. The limitless person is not willing to abandon the truth even in the smallest conversations. He will not make excuses or give explanations to satisfy others, because he is unwilling to compromise the truth as he sees it. When he knows that he is being true to himself, that his motivations push him to affirm the truth in any field, the unlimited individual feels satisfied with himself. The unlimited individual respects your instinctual needs and your natural ability to find the truth on any issue on your own. He accepts that he can make mistakes, but he will not accept that an individual or any institution knows better than he instinctively knows the path to follow in his personal search for the truth. The net result of his search for the truth in all things will be his basic sincerity as human being, because if he never has to lie to himself, he will never have to lie to others, except when basic morality overflows with the instinct not to lying, such as when you tell a potential thief that you have no money, when in fact you have it hidden in another room. In short, the limitless individual will unleash his natural tendency to seek the truth alone in all things. Beauty. The need for beauty is perhaps the broadest of your higher needs because it encompasses all others. Individuality is beauty. So is respect for others and ourselves and the feeling of belonging to the world and the human species. So are affection and love, meaningful work, fun, creativity, truth, justice, and even physical beauty itself. We tend to think of beauty very narrow-minded. When we say, "How beautiful that woman is," we may only comment on her appearance. But if we say, "She is a beautiful person," we mean much more, that she brings beauty, grace, humor, love, respect, or any other quality to her own life and the lives of others. We also say a beautiful day, wanting to say that there is sun and a pleasant temperature. But if we say, a beautiful day because a spectacular storm has just occurred that inspired us to make love in the haystack, we mean much more, that the day brought unusual beauty, grace, humor, love, respect, or anything else in our life. Try immersing yourself in a disgusting environment for a long period. Empty your life of all beauty and surround yourself with the hateful and the unpleasant. The consequences will overwhelm you. You will discover very soon how important it is to have beauty in life and to be able to appreciate what is attractive. Without beauty he would soon become deaf and indifferent to his surroundings. You would become spiteful, angry, restless, resentful, and even ill if you were denied access to the beauty of this world. There are many who consider beauty to be a luxury, and they think that they can do very well without it if necessary. But it's not like that. The need for beauty is precisely that, a need, and without it the body suffers as much as if it were denied sleep or shelter, although the results of this lack take longer to manifest. Look at the people who have to live in the most horrible environments imaginable, the urban suburbs where the experience of environmental and scenic beauty is rather nil. Look at the effects that just being in this type of environment has on those who live there for a long time. Individuals living in a world of rats, broken glass, disease, malnutrition, drugs, prostitution, garbage on the streets, and poverty everywhere become individuals who renounce themselves. Soon they lose the desire to live, they begin to hate, to feel persecuted, to get sick, and finally, they die prematurely. People need beauty in life, if only to have a positive sense of their world. Music, pictures, books, deep discussions, theater, twilight, flowers, animals, rivers, smiling faces and fresh air are essential necessities for people to be healthy and satisfied to be alive. The unlimited individual seeks beauty and collaborates to make it accessible to others. All of them, almost without exception. Limitless individuals are vigorously engaged in tasks that serve to improve the world, to make it a more beautiful place for others to inhabit. They want everyone to be able to appreciate beauty. Beauty provides hope. Consider the refugees who have lived with great deprivation during the first stage of their life. When they go to a concert or an excursion or to any beautiful place for the first time, it is as if they gave them a direct injection of happiness, of enthusiasm. They savor it all, they absorb it all. One contact with beauty is enough to give you renewed strength and hope for years to come. Do not hesitate, the more you learn to appreciate beauty, and to help make it available to others as well, the more you will collaborate in the task of becoming a limitless individual, and simultaneously satisfy your own instincts for higher needs. Superior needs and lower needs, a general consideration. Limitless individuals do almost everything they do to satisfy higher needs. In his life the search for truth, justice for all, beauty, perfection and goodness is essential. They are not interested in power or materialism or exploitation itself. Although they have the same biological needs as everyone else, they basically satisfy them through their ability to throb like living organisms in their environment. The unlimited individual loves his body, takes care of it and is not always trying to prove himself with it and with his physical capacity. You are at peace with your body, and your body is just an accepted part of your life. The unlimited individual thus has the freedom to attend to the supreme values. He seems to have a continuous awareness of them, and his life revolves around cultivating those values, and helping others appreciate them. He is not an evangelist of higher values, but he seems to be so constituted that he suffers physically if he does not satisfy those higher values. You need the truth and you seek it. He avoids the company of liars because he knows that if he does not do so they would end up dragging him into the lie as well. Avoid fake ones, thieves, even neurotics, because you want to overcome their behaviors in your own life. You don't want your pathologies to negatively affect you. The unlimited individual is not governed by money like most people because he does not work so much for money as for the internal satisfaction he gets from being connected to higher goals. You are willing to sacrifice accumulating money for the fulfillment of your mission in life. He is almost obsessed with the desire for this world to be a better world, and he will behave in a way that is difficult for most to understand. You are able to quit a well-paying job if you think that job will give you. It engages negatively, without hesitation for a moment. He will put his life on the line if necessary to let others know what his attitude is towards the truth and the good. The limitless individual is under the vigorous influence of these higher needs and considers them the most important thing in his life. He is passionately dedicated to improving the quality of life for the less fortunate. He will risk retaliation in defense of justice, and many will fail to understand how he can be so foolish and obsessed with what he believes to be fair. He will chain himself to a fence to protest against social injustice. He will, in fact, do practically anything to repair an injustice. You will dispense with the fact that many regard you as a fool. You know what to do, you are in touch with your internal signals and no one will divert you from your path. In sum, all of our needs, from those that are basic for economic survival to those that increase our chances of living a life without limits, are needs in the truest sense. If an individual is deprived of the truth, he will become ill as if deprived of proper food. The same can be said of beauty, goodness, justice, self-reliance, individuality, and all higher needs. The unlimited individual, whatever his occupation, cannot function if he does not pursue those objectives for his own benefit and for others. The unlimited individual will reject external values if he feels threatened by them, and there will not be sufficient salary or any other type of compensation that can dissuade him. Do not forget that your lack of inner peace and that feeling that you are not going anywhere in life have nothing to do with money or basic needs that money can cover. Surely you feel that in your life there is no truth, that you are not true to yourself. Your anxiety and depression, or your illnesses, are probably the result of not meeting your higher needs. Work toward meeting those higher needs, all of them, and you'll find yourself feeling more satisfied than ever. 8. To cultivate the feeling of having a goal in life. Having a goal in life is the most important requirement to become a fully functioning unlimited individual. This is a very strong statement, but I make it truly appreciating how meaningful it is to you to become an individual who places the feeling of having a goal at the top of your list of personal commitments. Without the sense of a goal, your life will be empty, you will feel dissatisfied, and if those feelings become acute you will feel disappointed, anguished, depressed, and have other symptoms that are but facets of living an externally directed life. The feeling of a vital objective is not clear to many people, mainly because they try to govern their lives by rules imposed on them by other people who also lack a sense of personal mission. The vast majority of people live locked in their daily routines of trying to pay their bills, educate their children, go to and return to work, try to save a little to buy more material objects and live, in general, the kind of external life that it keeps them going, but internally dissatisfied. While there is nothing unhealthy to earn a living and pay bills, there is something very disappointing and depressing about these two issues if the activities that lead to these results are meaningless to you, if as a human being you are wasting precious moments of your life in behaviors that do not give you a feeling of peace and inner satisfaction. That feeling of having a vital objective is achieved by fulfilling the daily schedule of work, play and whatever else you do with an awareness of your own importance and of having a personal mission in life. If your life choices don't provide you with those personal feelings of peace and fulfillment, you should reconsider why you choose to live outside of your life in a way that only allows you to exist rather than give you the ability to feel like you are on a mission and pursue a goal. You don't have to feel compelled to change jobs and relationships or do something drastic to get a sense of pursuing a goal in life. The most important element in this is the attitude with which you approach what you choose to do. But if you limit yourself to following the routine of your life, performing tasks that seem unpleasant, and having internal feelings of emptiness, you have a problem that you have to solve. As long as you don't begin to fill that void, you will never come to know your ability to live without limits. Not now, not ever, unless you are willing to say to yourself, and actively fulfill it, I am going to feel whole in my life because I am worthy of it. Life is too short for me to submit to the wishes and interests of others. I am going to be the captain of my own life, and if I make mistakes or suffer penalties I am willing to pay that price, but at least I will feel satisfied with myself, I will feel that I am deciding how my own life is going to be. This type of basic personal affirmation is essential to achieve the feeling of having a life goal. That feeling of pursuing a goal in life is something very personal. Some people can experience it working the land, others writing and others being with their relatives. Some people feel fully satisfied giving themselves to the task of educating their children and are totally immersed in everything related to this important task. Some individuals feel spiritedly alive when they are projecting a train, filling recipes, and training fighter pilots. The meaning of a goal in life has nothing to do with the fact of adapting cleanly to a specific work mold. The feeling of having a life goal is predominantly internal. It comes from within us, and only we can know if we have it or not. I can only report my own experience advising thousands of people. Very early I learned, as a therapist, that the main causes of negative feelings and actions were all related to this lack of a goal in life. Very few people, whether they were clients, family, friends, or acquaintances, had a really strong sense of having a goal and a mission in life. In the third chapter, where I describe in detail the conditions for becoming a limitless person, I alluded to my own sense of mission. I have found that when I can get people to stop thinking with stereotypes about themselves instead of allowing themselves the fantasy of thinking about what they would really like to do, they start talking about things that are personally satisfying and meaningful to them. The sad part of this little exercise is that many people flatly refuse to take the steps that would lead to their own feelings of mission and purpose. They use the same old, hackneyed pretexts I've heard thousands of times from risk takers: I'm afraid of failing. And my family responsibilities. I can't start changing my life now, I'm already too old. It's easy to fantasize, but reality forces you to earn money to pay the bills. All these feelings and many others like them are just excuses to remain immobilized in the place where you have decided to stay. The sense of purpose is achieved by ignoring those kinds of external excuses and promising to become the person you want to become. Paying bills, family responsibilities, and everything else will only be resolved if you give yourself permission to have a sense of purpose in life. If you have always been a conscientious, responsible, and bill-paying human being, you will not abandon those values and will suddenly become a hermit of the desert. You can choose to be a satisfied and responsible individual, and meet all your personal choice obligations if you are willing to eradicate those fears of change and failure that are the main obstacles that prevent you from being a limitless individual. If you make excuses or analyze your current status as something you are tied to by virtue of your previous life decisions, you will end up with exactly what you are defending: a life of fulfilling obligations but without any inner peace. I believe that there is nothing as important as having a sense of mission and purpose regarding oneself as a human being. If you want to stay healthy and creatively alive, you can't give it up. Having a sense of purpose in life is of the utmost importance. There is nothing that is more decisive for your survival and emotional stability. When that sense of purpose in life disappears, the individual becomes prone to depression, illness, stress, and even death. I remember several examples of individuals who, after saying, "My husband, or my wife, is my reason for living, it is all I have and the only thing that interests me," have manifested all the symptoms of illness and have died shortly after your partner dies. Placing a personal sense of a goal in life in another person carries the danger that one has no control over one's own destiny. If another person gives his life meaning and content and then disappears, his life will no longer have meaning or purpose. That feeling must, by definition, come from you. Many individuals are literally kept alive by their sense of personal mission. Some people are so into a project that they simply cannot afford to get sick or die. When the project is finished, and what gives meaning to his life also disappears, the individual will allow himself to become ill and death is usually the result. Viktor Frankl, in his book In Search of Human Meaning, tells how some of his fellow captives in a Nazi concentration camp literally lost their lives by losing the sense of an objective and a mission in their lives. A colleague from the prison camp explained to Dr. Frankl, "A dream," he explained that he would be released on March 31, 1945. This became his only reason for living, his only purpose in life. Viktor Frankl explains liberation like this. On March 29, he became clinically ill and his temperature became very high. On March 30, the day his prophecy had told him that war and suffering would end for him, he became delirious and lost consciousness. He died on March 31. All outward appearances seemed to indicate that he had died of typhus. The root cause of my friend's death was that the expected liberation did not come, and that this produced a terrible disappointment. This greatly reduced his body's resistance to latent typhoid infection. As his faith in the future and his will to live paralyzed, his body fell victim to disease, and with it the prophecy was fulfilled. Frankl talks over and over of prisoners who died when they no longer had a sense of a vital objective. He himself believed that his own survival was a direct consequence of that sense of purpose in life, which was to explain his story to all humanity. He knew he had to survive to fulfill that personal purpose. That desire gave him a strength that he had never believed he had. Although it is an exceptional situation in this case, it serves to exemplify how powerful the sense of purpose in life can be for the human being. Your own personal survival in terms of life and death may not be at stake, but I can assure you that your emotional stability, your feelings of dignity and happiness, along with your sense of commitment, are clearly tied to having a sense of worth, of meaning and purpose in life. And this sense should be something that you feel from within, rather than having it connected to someone or something external to you. Why most people don't have a true sense of vital goal, the decisive metro. If you think that there are fixed boundaries between life and death, the total distance between these 2 points being exactly 1.5 kilometers, you will have a visual image of your entire life. This expanse can be traversed in various ways, but at the end of it you will meet death, just like the rest of the human beings who have lived on this planet. Its 1.5 kilometers of life is 1,500 meters in total. All the instruction you have received, your experience, the educational goals and projects are intended to help you in the first 1,499 meters. That is the largest part of his life, and the rules for this part of his life are very different, very much, from those that govern that last decisive meter. In the greater part, 1,499 meters, of the 1.5 kilometers of his life, the norms relate to moving forward, competing with others, earning money, creating a family, saving for the future, striving, with mobility upwards, promotions, the acquisition of a culture, learning the rules of the game and mastery in general terms of all the techniques necessary to be able to function in an externally oriented culture like ours. That remaining meter, that small remaining fraction, represents a completely different kind of reality, in which the rules are completely different. The critical meter is a very important sector of your life, as it symbolizes its meaning, but your trainers and educators and you have practically ignored it. That last meter represents his feeling of having a purpose in life, the feeling of his own dignity and his own worth, of his condition of being alive and of his significance as a unique human being, and the real reason that he is here in the first place. Finished. To properly cover that critical meter, a different program of standards and guidelines is needed that do not really apply to that other longer part of the mile of your life. This entire book is about that crucial meter, the part of your life that you and your mentors have practically looked down on. In this critical meter, the rules are internal, they are not related to the need to make an effort or to upward mobility, they relate to your sense of self-worth, rather than looking over your shoulder at others to see what you stand out for. They refer to personal fulfillment from within and reliance on internal signals, rather than the accumulation of external things. The sensation of a meaning and an objective in life that leads to control that critical meter, the rules are internal, they are not related to the need to make an effort or to upward mobility, they relate to your sense of self-worth, rather than looking over your shoulder at others to see what you stand out for. They refer to personal fulfillment from within and reliance on internal signals, rather than the accumulation of external things. The sense of meaning and purpose in life that leads to controlling that critical meter has been largely ignored in favor of learning the norms necessary for that larger part. But most of it becomes almost completely worthless if you cannot divert the meaning of your life from those rules that serve to succeed in our culture by channeling it into the rules that can help you have a positive sense of yourself, while controlling, at the same time, all the things that our external culture poses to him on a daily basis. You cannot become competent in something you do not know. And if you reject the actions and mental processes that can lead you to achieve that sense of purpose in life, you will continue to turn in that other great sector of your life, the one that allows you to achieve external success, but that leaves you dissatisfied. Having a sense of purpose in life is inseparably related to becoming a limitless individual, taking risks and pursuing your own satisfaction and fulfillment, and rejecting the idea of being an individual who behaves exactly like everyone else. If you try to adapt, regulate yourself by external norms, or behave in any other negative way, you will never have that sense of purpose in life that is essential to your personal she/no limits status. You will act in a way that will give you some approval, help you move up the social ladder, and may even allow you to get rich, but you will not be able to eliminate that inner whirlwind until you, as a unique human being, have a sense of fulfillment. Actively your mission in life. That critical meter is the most important part of the mile in your life, and to feel fulfilled and satisfied on that last meter you have to master a completely different set of rules. Why do you think there is so much misgivings in the Western world and so little information about Zen, Taoism, transcendental meditation, and all the Eastern philosophies? Because most of our life has nothing to do with what those philosophies offer. We don't even have words to describe certain states that are taken for granted in the Zen view of life. We have no terms to describe total concentration or that behavior of living intensely in the present moment. We have never found a word to describe that state in which the mind is completely at rest without any outside interference. It is difficult to describe the idea of total plenitude in the languages of the Western world, especially because in our longing, hasty, competitive, assembly line, producing ulcers, in our eagerness to build better mousetraps, we have generally ignored such concepts. Our training in the development of the internal and personal sense of purpose in life and of inner peace is almost nil. We have been taught external things for so long that it is difficult even to think in transcendent terms. They have conditioned us to think in local terms, in frontiers and barriers, instead of in humanistic and global terms. Those who have managed to articulate their personal sense of purpose in life have always achieved that goal by transcending their own self, thinking in terms of all of humanity and making this planet a better place for all. The feeling that one has being good to others, improving the world, improving quality general of life, almost always the source of the feeling of a vital goal. It is difficult for us to achieve such a sensation as individuals, because we have overlooked the true source of the sense of life and have focused, on the contrary, almost exclusively on the narrow, rigid, and unsatisfactory way of the external and of adapting to a situation. Rushing and overwhelming world. How to achieve a sensation of life goal. The first thing you need to do to get a sense of purpose in life is to reverse the priority ratio between the critical meter and the previous 1499. It is time to give preference to the task of turning your sense of a goal in life into the purpose of the larger sector of your life, and to reduce all external thought and behavior to a necessary but insignificant meter of your life. The more you personally focus on the new standards, on becoming a limitless person, with all that that encompasses, the more you will begin to experience a true sense of mission in your life. Your inner self is experienced by you and only you. No one can get behind your eyeballs and be you. You must feel satisfied with yourself and with what you are doing, because otherwise you will have those demoralizing feelings of boredom, and emptiness that occur when you turn the greater portion of the 1.5 miles of your life into that external part and leave it as the sole domain of your inner self, the remaining meter. You have read many times about people who have been on the verge of death and have come out of the experience with a completely new philosophy of life. This could be a dynamic executive who has suffered a heart attack or a person who has emerged unscathed from a serious accident in which he was on the verge of perishing. When people have experienced things like this, their life almost always undergoes a change, so that the old critical meter becomes 1499. In other words, for individuals to center their lives in that sense of purpose and meaning, they need to go through a decisive experience. Such renewed individuals often abandon their former hasty life. They tend to seek other less burdensome means of earning a living, and they begin to spend more time with their loved ones. Often they begin to dedicate their lives to the things that fully satisfy them, and decide to relax more, enjoy the wonder of being alive longer. Their contact with death is the catalyst that allows them to renew themselves and turn their lives into something more than they were previously. You don't have to go through such an experience to begin to cultivate a sense of a life goal. You can make the decision to live meaningfully every day for the simple reason that it will make you happier, more efficient, and most of all, a more satisfied human being. It amounts to giving yourself permission to live your own life in the most rewarding way for you and the people you love. Settling for less is accepting the negative reasoning that you cannot change because you have already invested too much time and energy in your old lifestyle. In reality, you don't even have to alter your way of life to make your existence more meaningful. What you have to do is promise, and keep it in your new actions, that you are going to strive to personally change your attitude so that you experience that basic sense of purpose in life that most of our culture lacks. If you build a house that relies on a single support system and that particular support falls apart, the whole house will fall apart. The same applies to you. If you build your whole life around a person, an activity, a job, or a single support system of any kind, and that particular support disappears, you will collapse like the house in the previous example would. What you need to do to feel confident is to be adept at shifting gears, supporting yourself, and extracting meanings from a variety of activities. It is not advisable to try to get the whole sense of life goal from a single person or from a single activity. The unlimited individual is capable of feeling creatively alive in almost any situation. You don't need to hunker down in familiar territory or do only things you're used to doing. You don't have to always hang out with your close friends to feel satisfied. Everything that a human being is capable of doing is a potential source of human gratification and vital meaning, provided that the individual knows how to modify those old patterns of thought that lead to an unsatisfactory lifestyle. You may feel comfortable spending time with your child in the classroom, or you can use that time as an opportunity to feel bored, marginalized, and distant. The choice is always yours. You can find miracles anywhere, or you can search endlessly for them. Abraham Maslow wrote these words about miracles: "To be looking everywhere for miracles is for me a sure indication that it is ignored that everything is miraculous." Capturing this fundamental truth is essential to becoming an individual with a sense of purpose in life. If you stop placing the meaning of your life in individuals or events outside yourself, and look at the world with new eyes, that is, with a vision that allows you to have a purpose in all your activities, you have taken the first step towards have a true sense of one's own life purpose. Accept change as a way of life. Most people fear change. They stay in the same place not because they don't know how to function in a new environment but because the concrete process of change intimidates them. However, you can be absolutely sure of one thing: neither you nor anyone else can always stay the same. We all change. Change is the very foundation of life. If we didn't change, we would all stay exactly where we are. There would be no growth, there would be no life, there would be no death, there would be nothing if change were not built into the very roots of our humanity. Like it or not, change is an important part of ourselves. If you want that subtle sense of purpose in life, you have to fully identify with the very concept of change, and learn to welcome it rather than fear it. Learning to welcome change can be a big step in your life. There is no doubt that the individual gradually becomes comfortable with his environment in which he knows what awaits him each day. You feel a kind of external security in being able to predict part of your own life. But when that ability to predict becomes too large a part of your life, it creates that sense of emptiness that is so damaging to your personal fulfillment as a human being. Getting to a situation where you can have a healthy dose of foresight and stability with the added possibility of novelty and change is essential for the sense of purpose in life to begin to take hold of you. If you give yourself permission to try new experiences, to take risks and, above all, to do the things that you think are important, regardless of the opinion of others, your daily life will have more and more meaning and content. Our world is a rapidly changing place, demanding people for whom change is not a threat. Many of the jobs people have today didn't even exist 10 years ago. We need human beings capable of change, who are comfortable with the unknown and who can try anything, because otherwise we will not be able to make this world work in a way that meets the needs of all who inhabit it. You are part of this rapidly changing world. It is not isolated from the rest of the inhabitants of this place. You are an integral part of that process of change. In fact, even when you are reading this book, you are changing. Your cells change. You look different every day, you have attitudes, different from what you had a few years ago. He wears a different haircut, he wears new clothes that he once found objectionable and that he now proudly wears as his best clothes. He allows himself to attend functions that once seemed inappropriate to him, and he speaks with a different vocabulary than he used at another time in his life. And tomorrow you will be different too. He will wear different clothes, use new buzzwords, attend other shows, support different political views, etc., etc. As soon as you admit that change is the inevitable condition of being human, you will be more inclined to appreciate it in the significant areas of your personal life. If you can get used to the idea that change is wonderful instead of something to avoid, you will start the path to new, challenging and risky behaviors that will give your life meaning before you even know it. I am usually approached by individuals who have these concerns about me, and who express them with these typical phrases: "Wayne, I hope you do not change even if you get famous. Don't let fame change you, Wayne. You are not the same person from other times, before you came to see me, but now that you are famous you no longer come." These are individuals who express their fear of change. People change, of course, and stop doing what they did before. One will not always be in the same position, of course. Instead of fearing that change, I appreciate it. Although I don't want to become a conceited or presumptuous individual, or any other stereotype that may apply to a successful writer, or a painter or a musician, I am also not interested in always remaining exactly the same. The famous Beverly Hills opera singer wears a jewel with these initials engraved on it, EYLH. When asked about something he is doing that constitutes a change, like leaving the stage and going into production, he shows his detractors the inscription, whose translation is, "That already I did." For a fully functioning individual, having already done something is reason enough to move on to something else. Rather than endlessly repeating what he has already mastered and experienced, the individual with a sense of vital purpose enters new and unexplored territory. This kind of willingness to tolerate and even be grateful for change will ensure a renewed sense of purpose almost every day of your life. For authoritarians, change is a threat. The unlimited individual appreciates it. That is the difference between being able to function effectively in virtually any situation and feeling upset and immobilized whenever the disengagement is uncertain. To be comfortable with change, the individual must begin by feeling comfortable with himself. When you begin to feel more at peace with yourself, you feel less and less threatened by new circumstances because you trust that you can solve any problems that may arise. The one who avoids change is the insecure person who always doubts himself and wonders if he will be able to solve any new problem that arises. It is more comfortable to continue in the family environment, in territory already explored, and always know exactly what may happen. Being an individual without limits means being eager to become an adventurer, to try new behaviors, to meet new people, to explore the unknown and not only feel comfortable in a changing environment but to be concretely grateful for the presence of the mysterious and the unknown, enjoy going to new places, get excited at the prospect of being in new and unfamiliar territory. Individuals without limits are continually looking for new companies, new tasks. They don't want everything to stay the same. They are willing to change jobs without feeling internal fear that things just won't work out. The individual without limits seems to maintain an attitude of internal trust, of security that he will be able to solve anything that arises and that there is no special advantage in the fact that things always remain the same. In the person without limits, feeling comfortable with change not only manifests itself in that he is grateful for new and different media but also that he allows himself to adapt to them as well. You don't cling to old beliefs when they are no longer applicable or useful. The unlimited individual is not interested in remaining the same throughout life. You don't feel threatened by thinking completely differently now than you did before. The limitless individual is absolutely ready to admit that old values and attitudes no longer work, that old ideas can be discarded for good if they are no longer useful. The limitless individual has an intrinsic capacity to tell himself that a change of opinion is necessary, and he feels no remorse that old attitudes are no longer useful. Fully functioning individuals, because they are always exploring new territory and wandering the unknown, continually stumble upon new ideas and attitudes. When they tackle something new, they do it from a broad and open attitude, without having anything in particular to gain or lose, seeing only the new itself, as it is. This open attitude allows them to be grateful for change, because through change they always find novelty and innovation. For the same reason, the narrow-minded individual resists change because change endangers his entrenchment in front of life. You will often see she/unlimited individuals working for reform, and you will see authoritarians clinging to the old, even if the old and familiar no longer works. You will see that many people who are afraid of change vote against installing new equipment in a factory because they do not understand it, vote against revolutionary principles because they are not sure of being able to control the new, and even continue to perform tasks according to outdated procedures that are clearly negative, just because they don't know anything else and don't dare to do it in a new way. The unlimited individual is willing to assume the risks that change implies, especially social change, and, although there will be many who oppose him, especially in the first stages, the end result will be that the majority will end up agreeing with him. The practices and customs now established, such as wearing a bathing suit instead of wearing more clothes to the beach, legal rights for the poor, the right to vote, education for all, civil rights, air travel, satellite communications and almost all other practices that we consider normal were once considered revolutionary and dangerous. The reason we accepted them is that someone who liked change, who wanted the world to improve, and who inside felt safe roaming uncharted territory, agreed to take risks and was attracted and enthusiastic about innovation. If you want to have more unlimited inner attitudes, you must want to work to feel more comfortable with the change in your own life. Try some of these new attitudes to help yourself get there faster. Do something you've never done before. Do not value it, do not analyze it in depth, do not even wonder why, just see if you can do something new and feel comfortable and at ease in it. Try browsing only if you have never done so. Try to run 1 kilometer without stopping. Visit the stock exchange, climb a mountain, eat an unusual dish, make love in the car or whatever else is new to you. Try changing to see if you like it. If you don't try, you will be calm and confident, but you will feel less fulfilled and will not be able to cope with those really important changes that are to come, whether you are prepared for them or not. Try to talk to a stranger today. See if you can spend 5 minutes chatting with that person, spend a few moments of your time. By opening up to new people, even for just a few minutes, you'll gain invaluable experience in overcoming some of those unwarranted fears of the unknown. I have made it the practice of my life to meet at least one new person a day. In restaurants, I talk to a friendly waitress or another customer for a while, and I practice that open attitude with them. It's always easier to ignore strangers, but if you take a few minutes, share a little about yourself, and learn something from them, it's almost always an enriching experience. Stop fighting for everything to continue as usual, including yourself. The happy past no longer exists, what exists is the present and can be just as happy. Clinging to old beliefs and reminding yourself and others how things were before only serves to not enjoy the present and to resist change more and more. Carl Sandburg wrote of the happy past, "There are sometimes old men sitting by the exit of life who say, 'In those days there were giants.' Don't wait to be together at the exit of life to live. Accept change as inevitable even if you don't like it. Nothing stays the same on this ever-spinning planet. New ideas, new attitudes, customs, and values are no indication that the world is falling apart. It's the very ingredients that make it so great to be alive. Changes will happen no matter what you think of them, so why not be an individual who allows yourself to experience those changes quietly instead of fighting them every day? The more you practice enjoying the unknown, investigating the unusual, and taking risks, the more your life will become richer. Boredom is born from monotony and routine. The feeling of having a goal and a mission in life is born from the new and the different and from the acceptance of change. Choose. The importance of personal hope and trust. In the movie version of a wonderful book called A Name Called Fearless, Nazi German officers talk to a young woman who was arrested as an Allied spy in World War II. One of the officers, to convince the spy that she has absolutely no chance of escape and that she must collaborate with them to save herself a lot of unnecessary suffering, uses these words, trying to make her abandon her stubborn resistance to speaking. Without hope, we become unhinged and crippled creatures. But she has chosen as a vital mission to protect her comrades from espionage and remains silent and hopeful. If one loses hope and begins to feel trapped by the circumstances of his life, he soon falls into confusion and internal helplessness. We begin to feel depressed, as if our living environment imprisons us, and the longer we remain in this situation, the more overwhelming it becomes. In the end, with all feeling of hope disappearing, the individual begins to deteriorate, first mentally and then also physically. But let's think about the word hope. It is purely a mental process, which you may decide to banish from your life or to accept as a habitual element of your personality. Although I have encouraged you to be a present moment individual, you can still enjoy those present moments more by feeling hopeful and encouraged. You can consider yourself skilled enough to escape whatever traps you have set yourself, and this exercise in feeling hope will intensify your present moments. To have hope is to say that you have confidence in yourself. The two are inseparable. Hope means believing that you can use your own creative energies to improve your life. To do this, you need trust, and it only comes from action, not from desire or meditation. Hope is the mental part, trust the active and practical part, behavior. And you must begin by accepting the idea that there is always hope. Whatever the circumstances, you can always choose to think with hope, and that will help you to follow behaviors of confidence and trust. The prisoners of war who survived emphasize the importance of the willingness to always think with hope. William Nikas, who was rescued after being imprisoned for more than 3 years in a Venezuelan jungle, where rebels made him live in very primitive conditions, attributed his survival to never having given up hope and having lived day by day. Hope depends on you and is born of deciding to trust yourself and never lower yourself as a unique and meaningful human being. Hope is achieved by deciding to have it. That's enough. There are no magic formulas, there is no secret way to achieve it. It is enough for you to decide that you will not be overwhelmed by anything external to you, that you will assume the responsibility of changing your life if it is not satisfactory, that you will do it whatever the risks that doing so entails. When you translate your resolution into action, which you decide personally, you will do precisely what will lead to the feeling that life has purpose and meaning. Things do not mean the same to everyone by themselves, and you will discover what they are to you in action, not in complaining and immobility. Perhaps your neighbor was very satisfied being a shepherd, and perhaps your sister liked to have a bookstore and tend to it herself, her parents could love to travel, her brother could feel fulfilled in investigating a fascinating case as a lawyer, and perhaps you are not attracted to any of those things. But you will find out what your thing is as soon as you stop looking and allow yourself to try new things. It will not arise from a specific single activity, it will appear when you give yourself the opportunity to experiment, to take risks, to hope, and never fear success. This attitude of fear of the possibility of success is one of the greatest obstacles to achieving a sense of mission and purpose in life. Do not fear his greatness. There are many who fear their greatness and thus settle for much less than they consider satisfying and important. They are willing to accept being mediocre because they seem unable to show that sense of inner pride and to have a purpose in life that would allow them to be great. Abraham Maslow called this the who? Me syndrome. If you ask a child if he is a great human being, he is likely to answer, who? Me. When I talk to young people who are going to start medicine, law, architecture, or any other profession, I ask them what level they want to reach in that profession. Will the doctor be able to cure cancer? Will the lawyer fight for justice for all? Will you project the most important building in the world? Will it end hunger in the world? Will it reach the maximum achievable level in a given area? The answer is almost always this: I just want to make a living. I don't want to change the world. It is precisely that attitude that prevents us from having a goal in life. If all you do at work is earn a living, go to work because it is something you must do without remedy, you will soon feel empty and without purpose in life. If you are not going to solve the energy crisis, or cure cancer, or rid the world of hunger, or end injustice, or contribute in general to solving our many social problems, who will? I'll tell you who. Those people who are sure of having a goal in life. Those people who, transcending their own ego, their own need to adapt, have surpassed what most people think of their life. The people who have dedicated themselves to change things, to ensure that their lives and those of those around them unfold at the highest level, those will be the ones who act with a sense of purpose and mission in life. They will be active, interested, excited and enthusiastic about what they do. In addition, they will operate based on their internal signals, trusting themselves and guiding their lives from a perspective of importance and not of indifference and routine. Those are the limitless people I've talked about throughout this book. You can decide to be part of the social problem or to be one of those who solve conflicts and problems. It's up to you. You can lower your perspective, reject any self-image of greatness, and live by the safest route of just making a living. I guarantee you will never experience that goal in life feeling that you so desperately want. You don't have to be a social reformer to feel whole, but you have to have the inner feeling of doing things that really matter. And that they really matter equates to your own sense of fulfillment in helping to make this world a better place for some more if you can't make it a better place for everyone. We all have the capacity for greatness within us. Most of us never allow ourselves to think about it. It is threatening to remember the need to take risks and act rather than speak. Consequently, individuals often run away from their own greatness. Defensive attitudes abound, and many simply settle for less. The more you are inclined to settle for less, the more you allow yourself to evade that sense of purpose in life that this chapter, actually the entire book, aims to help you achieve. People think highly of those human beings who have achieved greatness and marvel at their superiority. They think that Leonardo da Vinci, Copernicus, Alexander the Great, Joan of Arc, Socrates, Lincoln, or Madame Curie are superhuman individuals. They thus tend to forget that Socrates and Leonardo had to struggle with the same thoughts, doubts, anxieties, and fears as them. They were not superior individuals. They were human beings like you, except that they acted, practiced, executed. They overcame their own who? Me. And they chose to be activists, to do rather than brood, and ended up being idolized. It will help you to imagine that you are Socrates, imagine that you value his philosophy as a human being and are willing to take the risks of opposing established values. Times are different, but your humanity is the same as Socrates or any other human being who accomplished something before you. The solution to your lack of purpose in life is to allow yourself to consider your own personal greatness. How do you feel when you are with people whom you consider superior? Do you prefer to feel belittled when you are with her? Tremble at the idea of associating with a great thinker? Attitudes of this type are frequent when the average individual reacts to those who manage to stand out and excel. But it all depends once again on your self-image, on how you decide to see yourself. If you compare yourself to a genius and find yourself inferior, never allowing yourself to think in transcendent terms, you will always feel uncomfortable in front of yourself. It is a vicious circle. Any feeling of personal deficiency that keeps you immobilized is but one more ingredient in that which prevents you from achieving a sense of vital goal. Think big. Imagine that you are great and fantastic and give yourself permission to achieve that sense of purpose in life that may have eluded you until now. If you run away from your own greatness and opt for routine and the feeling of being an incapable person, then you really fear your own perfection as a human being. We already discussed the dynamics of allowing yourself to feel perfect and still be able to develop and grow. That is also applicable here. All your personal weaknesses, your feelings of helplessness, your willingness to adjust, to conform to what you have become, are components of your general feelings of no real purpose in life. To break free from that feeling and to overcome your own dreams of greatness, you must realize exactly how you personally approach life on this planet as a whole, including your own. Consider life all as sacred. Having a sense of purpose in life implies a sense of commitment to life as a whole, in all its forms. The individual who thinks and acts without limits firmly believed in the sacredness of all living things. The most important quality of life is the value of life itself, and limitless individuals find it exceedingly painful to see any person or animal treated disrespectfully. Every human being has an intrinsic dignity, which is why we rarely see an individual she/limitless criticizing or abusing another. If you speak to she individuals, you will not hear them speak cruelly of others. They are not judges, and they do not waste time spying on others so that they can make malicious comments later. On the contrary, the individual she/limitless will generally speak of ideas. He does not focus on what his neighbors are doing, and does not pay much attention to what they are wearing, what they buy, what they consume. He has the firm belief that individuals deserve respect and have dignity and, consequently, he expects others to treat him as a worthy and important being, because that is how he sees himself and that is how he manages to have this sense of purpose in life. Due to his deep dedication to his life goals, he is generally a very busy person, an individual always active and always interested in what happens in life. You will see that other people are happy to be with the limitless individuals, because they seem to have very special qualities that make them attractive to others. If others seek them out, it is because they are sincere and try to say exactly what they think and, consequently, others tend to entertain them, often giving them exalted attributes and treating them as very special people. They are stimulating individuals because their lives are exemplary, and their esteem for lives encourages those who tend to be less kind. Since she/limitless individuals are not really interested in being mean, those around them soon change their behaviors for smarter and more humane ones. She/unlimited individuals treat everyone with special attention, and after spending some time with such a person you will end up feeling very special and unique too. They enjoy being original and treat others as if they were unparalleled individuals, not because they hypocritically flatter them but because they really know how to see the unique character of each person they meet. They know that there are other individuals in the world who try to make everyone adapt and be equal to each other, so they try to be individuals in everything they do. They do not accept being conformists just to go with the flow and are willing to endure opposition from others because they have chosen to think and act as individuals. Consequently, they spontaneously respect the individual dignity of all others. They do not judge people on superficial qualities, nor do they label a human being bad just because they may have misbehaved. They know how to immediately forgive those who have learned from their mistakes without holding a grudge, and it is not difficult for them to give others a second chance. The American poet E. E. Cummings wrote this little poem that summarizes the importance that the individual she/sin limits attaches to being an individual and opposing any attempt to adapt to uniformity. Be just yourself. In a world that does what is possible night and day for make you like everyone else, is to face the hardest fight that a human being can face, and not leave. Never fight. The she/limitless individual is never a puppet who just acts like everyone else. No one can convince you to vote in blocks, or to behave like a fanatic supporter of a sports team or a musical group. They respect themselves too much to allow themselves to be pigeonholed into any artificial category. They are neither in favor of the bosses nor in favor of the workers, but in favor of humanity, and they express their opinions on any subject according to what they feel and believe, not how they are expected to feel or believe. They think for themselves in all circumstances and do not accept being treated as small parts of a great whole. They vote according to their conscience and respect the right of others to do the same. Don't try to compartmentalize an individual the moment he thinks you have classified him, he will turn around and behave in a totally unexpected way. But if you were to emulate him, if you wanted to, here are several ways to start. Watch yourself in conversations. Try not to talk about anyone in negative terms, and don't be seduced by the malevolent pleasure of being gossipy and critical. Eliminate slanderous phrases from your vocabulary, and don't forget that all you are doing is fooling yourself into convincing yourself that you are superior by putting others down. If you find that your friends and relatives indulge in the abusive behavior of speaking ill of others, kindly remind them of what they are doing and flatly refuse to join in the game. By showing others that you are not interested in focusing on what particular individuals are doing or not doing, and by not using sarcasm, you will become more fully human while helping others to limit their own negative behavior. Follow the trend of respecting all living beings, showing the same respect for other lives as for your own. If you see that a child needs help, take the time to help it. You will soon see that you feel much better being a person who protects life rather than destroys it. This respect for life can be extended to the entire animal kingdom. We are here together, and when we help each other to be more independent and to be healthier, I believe that we fulfill one of the main objectives of our stay here in the first place, that is, of our mission in life. If you adopt the attitude of considering life sacred, you will have a more authentic sense of mission and vital purpose and, consequently, you will be a happier and more self-satisfied human being. The fundamental meaning of service or mission. Limitless individuals differ from almost everyone else by the fact that they are dedicated to a personal cause that transcends their concrete self. This kind of vigorous delivery is difficult for ordinary people to understand. It means being able to get excited about what you do, feel vitally involved in your personal goal that you set yourself here on earth, and feel within yourself that you are actually doing something positive. This sense of mission satisfies an inner need and provides an almost creative arrogance when it comes to the importance of who you are and why you act as you act. In talking to people who have a sense of mission and purpose in life, I have found that almost everyone gets inner feelings of satisfaction from doing something for others. When you behave in a way that serves to help improve the quality of life of another, at any level, you get the greatest source of fulfillment and satisfaction and the surest guide to having a greater sense of life mission. In speaking with people who have changed careers later in life, I have found that those who have gone from something like selling insurance, for example, to counseling troubled youth often display a strong sense of mission. You can also move on to selling insurance later in life, of course, and experience the same sense of mission. And when I asked them why they felt different, they almost always answered, "Now I have the feeling that I am doing something worthy, something worthy." Achieving a sense of mission in life is almost like discovering the meaning of your own life without having to indulge in a laborious search. It is difficult for an individual to discover such a sense of mission if he is totally isolated. On the contrary, it is easier for it to emerge if one indulges in specific tasks, ideas, and behaviors that provide some service to others. Notice how that special, warm feeling that others appreciate you arises when you hear that what you have done has helped another human being. It's that spine-tingling feeling, of personal satisfaction, when you know you are doing things that others appreciate. I experience that feeling whenever I receive a letter from a reader who has been moved by something I have written. I know that I have fulfilled my mission when people say that they have changed for the better, after hearing a talk from me on television or reading an article of mine. I speak of something very personal when I say that I fulfill my mission in life with greater vigor when I know that I have improved the life of another human being. Everything is arranged so that I can help others to achieve a personal and proper sense of truth, beauty, and justice. When they experience it, I experience it too. And despite the fact that I don't really think I need that flattery or approval, because I will continue to write and work without it, I also know that I love knowing that I am useful to others. When I am aware of it, I feel better than ever. My work is outside of me in several ways. I don't have my me entangled in it. I know that what I do is of great importance and I give myself to it wholeheartedly, but I don't have the feeling that I have to do that personally to feel satisfied with myself. It's almost like I've transcended myself and allowed myself to go out there and do what I like to do, and I could stay behind at the same time and see the results. I don't have the feeling that I have to do it to justify my life. Actually, it is the other way around. My life is justified by the fact that I say it is, and I sincerely believe that it is true, regardless of what anyone else may decide to believe. Consequently, I am free to act without respite and without having to prove anything. When I get to this state of being able to do only what I do, to do it well, without judging or valuing myself, I discover that I function at the highest level. By transcending yourself and placing your life mission outside yourself, you will flow more freely without interference from others or yourself. If you approach your ability to view your work or your behavior as something outside of you and to you as the instrument of its transfer to the world, work will be something inseparably linked to increasingly sublime values. You will find that you work more for what it is worth to be a contributing individual than for money, although you will happily accept the financial pay as well. You will feel the thrill of pursuing the truth within yourself and sharing it with others. It will be your most sublime values that stimulate you. He will estimate what he does for transcendent causes. That is essentially the sense of service or mission. And you will immediately have that sense of purpose in life if you begin to see yourself and life with new eyes. You may be interested in following a few specific behaviors and some of the attitude changes described if you are truly interested in having the sense of a life goal on a daily basis. There is nothing magical about it. All you have to do is make the decision that today, you will practice more behaviors related to that sense of vital purpose. That he is not going to be artificial with himself or with others, and that he is going to consult his inner voice to determine what he will do with his life. Try a few of these behaviors for a change and see if they give you more intense feelings of purpose in life. Personal strategies to have the sensation of a goal in life and of sincerity with yourself. The sense of vital purpose is not, of course, something you can achieve automatically just because you try a few new strategies. Cultivating that sense of purpose in life requires a general attitude that is, in turn, the result of being yourself, consulting your inner cues, getting excited about work, and acting like limitless people do, as I have done. Described throughout the book. You can achieve that sense of purpose in life by radically modifying certain behaviors and adopting an inner attitude of self-esteem, meaning. If you want to get that wonderful feeling of a goal in life, if you strive to be even more of a limitless individual, here are some techniques to help you speed up the process. Remember that you can earn a living in a number of different ways. Also, that there is no reason to continue in the same job or in the same profession just because you have already invested a lot of time in what you are currently doing. Allow yourself to do anything and wander into new territory in your career decision-making. Do not accept that absurd idea that it is vocationally immature to change jobs or careers. It is stupid and neurotic to keep doing things that do not give you any satisfaction, having as you have so many options. Do not forget that anything you are interested in is a possible means of earning a living and savoring the experience that work brings. If you enjoy doing something, but there are those who consider you immature and irresponsible, you will have to ignore their criticism if you want to have a sense of mission and a goal in life. You cannot always be considerate and always please everyone else and feel good about yourself. You must take risks frequently, risks that can lead you to acquire your own sense of a goal in life. Take those risks and invite your loved ones to join you, rather than holding a grudge against them for hindering your growth. Be enthusiastic in whatever you decide to undertake. When you approach any problem or any personal task, with a certain enthusiasm for your task and for yourself, you have a feeling that is deeper than the objective of what you are doing and that of your life in general. Enthusiasts are those who maintain an attitude of joy and excitement in life. They see it as a challenge, and they are not discouraged by having to do things over and over again. They accept the fact that they have chosen and then do what they have chosen with the greatest zeal. By taking on a task with the right attitude, no matter how unpleasant you may find it, you can make the time you spend meaningful and worthwhile. I have spent many pleasant afternoons doing things that others find boring and routine. Drawing a chapter plan can be exciting if you put it in the right perspective. Also, cleaning the house is pleasant to me directly depending on how much I enjoy the results. I can feel very good taking care of the child or spending the whole night in front of the machine to finish something in the agreed time. And this is so not because I am special, but because I decide to be truly enthusiastic in life. And my time is the precious coin of my life, to which I attach immense value. Be spontaneous and confident. Don't make the mistake of believing you are obligated to impress others. Try to hold back if you seem on the verge of showing off or being a liar in any way. Allow yourself to be as natural as you feel. If you want to cry in a place where others prefer to hold back tears, do so. And if you want to laugh out loud, try it and you will see how its naturalness rubs off. The more you try to be yourself, the more likely you will feel that life has meaning and purpose. When you show off or don't act naturally, you lose the sense of purpose in life, especially because deep down you despise yourself for being so non-serious. And when you despise yourself, you never achieve that sense of purpose in life. In order to bring that self out into the world and to be productive and useful, you will have to be at peace with yourself. When you feel good about yourself and act naturally as a result, you offer the world a worthy self, and you have the sense of purpose in life, when you are who you are, without barriers or artifice. Be active. The active are usually much more at peace with themselves than the idle and inert. When there are many different interests and many different things to do, and you distribute rest and work at your discretion, you feel much more useful and with more interest in life. The more things you do free of rush sickness, the more you want to do. And those who are capable of many things tend to be more satisfied than those who impose strict limits on their lives. Let yourself be guided by your inner values. What most differentiates the unlimited individual from the ordinary person is that he lives and is guided by those higher values that I have talked about throughout the pages of this book. Seek a truth of yours, pursue beauty and justice in your world. Insist that they treat you with dignity, ask for the good in your life instead of accepting bad. The more you operate from within, relying on those values above all others, the more meaningful your life will be to you. Do not forget that the lack of truth, beauty, justice, and dignity is as harmful as the lack of oxygen and food. Although the pathological process takes a little longer to settle and manifest. Decide what you value most in life. Then actively pursue that which you hold dear, rather than trying to adapt to a mold that does not interest you. You have a perfect right to want what you want, and there is no one thing or activity that is better than another, unless you choose to believe it. Be a creator in your life and reject his tendency to criticize other creators. The more you overcome that old tendency to speak critically of others, the more you use that time to carry out any activity, the more likely it is that you will come to have a real sense of purpose in life. Backbiting and criticism can make you feel petty and inconsistent, and these are the feelings you want to eradicate from your life altogether in order to get to work, feeling that you have a vital goal. Give yourself permission to have something sacred in life. Family, love, religion, the feeling of being truthful and sincere, a passion for the arts, or whatever you consider truly sacred is a wonderful help in cultivating a sense of purpose in life. When you believe that certain people or ideas are sacred, you tend to do much better with them. The more feelings of this kind the things and people that matter to you in life produce in you, the more meaning you will have of a vital purpose in all that is related to that which is sacred. Considering certain things and people precious and of great value, one allows one to function at a higher level and, of course, the higher the level at which one develops his life, the more meritorious and important that life will be. Cultivate the friendships that matter most to you. Allow yourself to be intimate with someone. Maintain that friendship by trying to keep it sacred and sincere. Let yourself go free with the people you truly trust. That kind of relationship can become a treasure for you as you cultivate and develop a personal sense of purpose in life. Don't just say you love that person, show it with your behavior. If you have a person who interests you and with whom you share your life, a person who you know will never judge you, with whom you can be absolutely open and sincere, you will undoubtedly value the time you spend with her very much. Having moments that we hold dear and value at the highest she levels increases our sense of purpose in life. Orient your life more towards training and development. Try to ignore the shortcomings in your life and ask yourself what you would like to be. Remember the phrase I quoted, you don't have to be sick to get better. Be an individual who makes choices that involve growth and development, and give yourself permission to have some flaws. Those failures don't have to be the source of your encouragement. You don't have to go around examining your deficiencies to decide where you want to be. You can accept yourself where you are, but work regularly to develop and grow every day. The more such choices you make, the greater your sense that there is purpose in life. Check how many personal barriers you can honestly identify. Stop fooling yourself. If you are not sincere with yourself, you will never have a sense of purpose in life. Notice when he is greedy, pretentious, when he is prejudiced, when he is arrogant, critical, or stupid. Consider it a learning experience, but try to reverse that trend next time. To change, you have to start by recognizing that you are defensive. Granted this, although it is difficult to change immediately, the concrete process of admission is a great step towards a greater sincerity with oneself. And when you become truly honest with yourself, you feel so much better in life, and you soon have that subtle sense of purpose and mission that so many people never experience. Remember that you cannot fail to be yourself. Go for what you want with the prior assumption that there will be failures. Although you may fail in certain things, and you can never, of course, master a technique without first going down the path of failure, you cannot fail as a human being in the task of being yourself, because you live complete at all times. Learn to accept a failure from time to time and to stop considering yourself a failure just because you were unsuccessful in some activity. Face the real problems in life. Try to dispense with the superfluous and focus on knowing your personal position when it comes to higher human values. You will find that you feel much more important and fulfilled if you address things in your conversations that can truly transform the world, influence it. Although you want to be childish and frivolous at times, that does not prevent you from being aware of the supreme values of our culture. By being aware of these values and what they mean to you, and sharing them with people you trust, you can help develop yourself as an individual at the same time. If you ignore the key issues and neglect those supreme values and the problems of humanity, you will focus on your personal contribution to the world in a superficial and futile way. I suppose you have heard many people say that they did not count for anything, in fact, that they were beings without any influence, without any weight. This feeling leads to doing nothing and avoiding life. It prevents us from achieving the feeling of a vital goal, because it is obviously impossible to have such a feeling while feeling both helpless and powerless. Consider yourself someone who can change the world, who is informed, who really counts, and thus will forge that inner sense of vital purpose. Try to overcome the localism in your life. If you think you belong to only a small fragment of humanity and limit yourself to that fragment, you will end up feeling insignificant as a result. Become a citizen of the world. Consider all of humanity as your brothers and sisters. If people are starving in Bangladesh, a part of you is starving there too. If you feel like a citizen of the world, you will tend more to want to improve the world than to reserve your action to local interests in the neighborhood. Unemployment, prostitution, drug addiction, poverty, all these things worry both the state of Ohio and Indonesia. The fact is that we all occupy this fragile planet together, and thinking big instead of small will help you have a greater sense of purpose in life. It will also push you further into corrective action to see their problem as our problem. Don't settle for being less than you could be. You are as important as any other human being who has ever lived before you can be. Don't fear your own greatness. Remember that you can become anything you want, and that greatness is within your grasp if you truly want it. You are not great because others say so, it is basically something internal. All the great problems facing the world will have to be solved by great people. And why shouldn't you be one of them? If you are not, who should be? If everyone passes the ball, no one will score. If you jump into action and feel important, you will gain that sense of purpose in life as an added reward. Ask for the information you want about yourself. If you sincerely search for information about yourself among the people you care about in life, you will take a lot of the guesswork out of your relationships. Be willing to accept without barriers what I have to say to another. The more you know, the less doubts you will have. You will soon discover that it is very easy to inform yourself, and you will no longer have to constantly guess. For my part, I never waste time wondering what people will think of me. If I want to know, what I do is ask. I thus obtain the information I seek, and I also believe that I know more about myself. The better you know yourself, the more sense of purpose in life you will have. 9 questions that can help you be sincere with yourself. Ask yourself these questions and try to answer them honestly without resorting to trickery or deception. You may find it difficult to answer them without referring to what you believe to be true about yourself so far, but if you can put your past history on hold and react alone, especially with someone you know and love, that will be of great help. To forge that ability to be totally honest. 1. How would your life change if you knew you only had 6 months to live? The answers to this question will be very revealing and help you to be more honest and direct with yourself. If you make very drastic changes, you are not living your current life with absolute personal integrity. Consider that you only have a short period of life, compared to eternity. Even if you have 50 years or more to live, that is only a few seconds of eternity. Thinking in a 6-month period is useful because it gives you just enough time to do things that are important to you, and it is not such a short period that it is over in the blink of an eye. If you say that, with only 6 months left to live, you would change many things, I would advise you to start those changes now. Remember that you have little time to live. If you change jobs, relationships, places, friendships, lifestyle, means of communicating with loved ones, or anything else, why not start doing it while you still can? If you don't do exactly what you would do now if you knew that you only had a few months to live, it is that you are living a lie, and that your level on the scale of total sincerity personal is very low. You cannot have a sense of vital purpose, or that your life has meaning, if you limit yourself to living it as an inert being instead of doing it as you would like. Regardless of how you justify it to yourself, drastically changing your life under these adverse circumstances indicates that there is no basic goal in your life. Because, in reality, from the perspective of eternity you only have a few months, and thus save it for later are assuming there is a future. Don't gamble with your life. Live the 2. If you could live with anyone in the world, who would you choose? Suppose for a moment that you have no legal obligation to stay with your family, if any, and that there is no reason why you could not legally live with anyone outside of your immediate family. Under these circumstances, who would you decide to live with? What people do you prefer in the world? Is he with her everything that he would like to be with? The question is this: if you live your life with relationships, family or otherwise, that you feel compelled to have without really wanting them, you should ask yourself why you have such hypocritical relationships. Are your close friends the people you really enjoy? Is your love relationship based on mutual love or obligation? I believe that you can turn most obligation-based relationships into relationships of choice by granting yourself and others you care about the freedom to be whatever they want to be. You don't have to base your intimate relationships on something as unworthy as obligation, but rather be totally honest and ask yourself if those relationships are what you, and others, really want them to be. If the answer is no, try to improve all your relationships so that they are what each one really wants, or forget them and try to be with people with whom you really have fun and enjoy. As Thomas Hobbes said, obligation is slavery and slavery is hatred. If you live with certain people just because you feel compelled to do so, you undoubtedly lack personal sincerity and have opted for a type of slavery. Although you may justify your choice by claiming that it shows that you are a good and responsible person, you are actually paralyzing your personal sense of vital meaning and sense by constantly testing your inability to choose what you want deep down. Also, who among those you spend your time with would really enjoy knowing that you are doing it out of obligation rather than personal choice? Would you want an individual attached to you if you knew that you didn't really want to be there, that you were just feeling compelled to do so? Any choice based exclusively on obligation lacks dignity. 3. Where would you decide to live if you could choose anywhere in the world? Imagine that you had no commitments and could stop living where you have lived until now. Where would you decide to live? Would you choose the neighborhood, city, state, country, and hemisphere in which you currently live? If you are living in a place because you have always lived there and for no other reason, you are certainly not entirely honest with yourself. You may think that it would be impossible for you to move to another place, and that you have firm roots where you are at the moment, but that reasoning is largely born of the fear of trying new activities and of resigning yourself to being where you are because it is easier, safer, and less troublesome. You can be where you would like to be, don't hesitate. You don't have to get sucked into your story, but you can indulge in what you would like to indulge in. That fear of change, of moving to new places, of testing your ability in any place that appeals to you personally, is just because you are not true to yourself. Although you can defend your inertia and tell yourself that it is impossible for you to move at this stage of your life, the fact is that if you like a different place and choose to stay where you are, for whatever reason, unless you are in jail, you are not living your life from a totally honest perspective, no matter how much you claim otherwise. 4. How much do you think you would sleep if you didn't have a watch or the ability to calculate how long you sleep? Do you go to bed at bedtime? Do you wake up when you are to wake up? Do you go to bed thinking that if you can't get 8 hours of sleep, you will be tired the next day? Give yourself a little fantasy for a few moments. Imagine that you do not have a watch, and that you have no way of knowing how much you sleep. Imagine that someone else controls your sleep period but you don't know it. How many hours a day do you think you would sleep? Do you think you would go to bed at the same time if you had no idea when bedtime is? Imagine that I live underground, in a bunker, where you have no idea day or night and can lie down whenever you feel like doing so. Most people control their sleeping hours with external elements such as clocks and calendars, rather than being guided by their actual desire to sleep. The hours of sleep depend largely on what one has learned, not what one needs or wants. You would probably sleep much less if your life was full of exciting experiences, if you had a sense of mission in life, and if you didn't review or control what time you go to bed and how many hours you sleep. The totally sincere individual is sincere in everything, including the reason for sleeping when he does and if he does so as a reaction to boredom, unpleasant activities, or habit. The more you allow yourself to be awake and alive, and the more you go about the natural activities of your life in accordance with choice rather than habit, or unsettling expectations, the more likely you are to have a totally honest appraisal of yourself. There are many studies that have shown that when people are busy and are not aware of time and have a great interest in life, they think less about sleeping, they rarely experience fatigue, and they have a sense of purpose as human beings. 5. How much and when would you eat if you didn't have a meal schedule? Suppose you can eat when you are hungry and only to satisfy your appetite. Do you think you would have the same eating habits? Many people eat because they are afraid of being hungry a few hours later. People also eat by the clock, instead of checking the internal appetite clock. Total sincerity means personally deciding when and what to eat, according to one's own needs and not according to the dictates of an imposed external program. The more you trust your own good judgment and the more you allow others to do the same, the more likely you are to develop faith and confidence in yourself. Children would have a very strong sense of the right foods if they were allowed to control their own eating habits. The more you allow yourself and loved ones to have personal confidence, the more you will build a strong sense of personal integrity. That applies to almost everything in life, but it is particularly important when it comes to food. I have seen parents literally force their children to eat, turn mealtime into a battlefield, trading each vegetable with the promise of some reward. The process of healthy eating, a very natural process without a doubt, often turns into a nightmare if you do not trust yourself and your loved ones. You don't really have to eat just because it's time to eat, or because others are doing it, or because if you don't, you'll be hungry in a few hours. You can eat properly when you feel like it, and you do not need to follow any program unless you lack the necessary self-belief to make proper judgments about your own personal health. 6. What would you do if money did not exist? Allow yourself to imagine doing whatever you like to do. Forget that you have to earn a living, and ask yourself only what you would do without any possible financial gain. If you are spending your life on something that makes no sense to you and you justify it by saying that you should do it because it provides you with the money you need to pay the bills, you are clearly opting for some personal self-falsehood. You have made money more important than your own sense of purpose in life, and as long as you maintain that order of priorities you will always lack a vital goal and will not achieve total sincerity with yourself. Most people never understand that money is after you when you are not after it. You can feel fulfilled in life, doing the things that please you with a sense of vital purpose, and money will haunt you in amounts large enough to keep you in a responsible and debt-free position. But if you convince yourself that you will never be able to do the things you really you would like to do because you would undoubtedly crash financially and end up living off charity, think that what you choose is to continue with the money chase syndrome, which is a psychological dead end. Whatever it is that you would really like to do, it is a primary possibility to earn a living as well. On this planet there is a market for everything. There are millions of people who would benefit from those tasks that you could carry out with total vitality. The problem is becoming honest enough with yourself to take the risks of doing things that bring a sense of purpose in life, rather than chasing money that only guarantees a sense of external security. There is no possible substitute for accepting risk in this field. If you choose to avoid risks, you can take the position Jackson Browne tells us about in his song The Pretender, I'll be a happy idiot and fight for the legal tender. 7. Would you be just as old if you didn't know how old you are? If you did not know your date of birth or have the means of knowing it, how old would you think you are? Do you think that you are only capable of doing certain things appropriate to your age and thus govern many activities of your life thinking about your age? Should the young behave in one way and the old in a completely different way? If you think about age stereotypes, you are not completely honest with yourself. Actually, you can do whatever your fancy asks you to do, even if no one else in your particular age group supports what you are doing. Deep down, a totally honest person never sticks to age groups. You are as old as you decide to be, and any age-based limitation is mostly self-imposed. You can swing on a swing, go dancing at a disco, suck your thumb if you really feel like it. If you didn't know how old you are, you would calculate it largely by your attitudes in life. You could consider yourself young and vigorous even if you had lived 3/4 of a century. You would not appreciate the difference if you did not have some external document, such as a birth certificate or any other reminder that rigidly places you in time. The totally sincere individual with a sense of purpose in life does not allow his age to influence the vital choices he makes. He acts according to what seems right to him, rather than sticking to what he should theoretically do in that particular year of his life. There are people who are traumatized by birthdays, 30, 40, 50, 60. Other people are much more honest with themselves, do not pay attention to these artificial barriers and go directly to what they choose for themselves regardless of how old they are. 8. What type of personality would you choose if you started now? Imagine that you can choose the personality you want. Which one would you choose? Would he be more determined, less shy, more outgoing, less coy, more stable, more humorous, easier to speak, less credulous? If you don't have the type of personality you'd like to have, you've decided not to be totally honest with yourself. You can alter anything that you dislike about yourself, as long as you decide to do so. The decision must, of course, be followed by effort and work, but there is no doubt that only you can make that choice. Your personality is what you allow it to be. If you were given the opportunity to choose a completely new personality and chose different characteristics, it would be proof that you do not realize that you have such a choice right now. No one forces you to remain shy, nervous, insecure, or gullible. It is you who makes those vital choices, and you can undo them if you really want to. The totally sincere individual understands that he is responsible for his own responsibility, and does not hold anyone else responsible for what he is, even though he knows that some experiences in his previous life contributed to his choosing to be what he is today. Total honesty means not blaming anyone. It means that you do not defend your lack of capacity and authentic will to be what you would like to be by blaming others for what you are today. You can choose the type of personality you want, do not hesitate. 9. How would you describe yourself if you couldn't use any labels? Suppose someone asks you to define yourself but prohibits you from using any of the traditional labels that most people rely on so much. Suppose you could not tell how old you are, where you live, what you have studied, what is your ethnic origin, your professional history, your family status, your economic status, your marital status, the color of your hair, your height, or even your name. Suppose you had to describe exactly what kind of human being you are. Could do it? Could you talk about yourself without resorting to the traditional labels that are used so often to hide who we really are? Could you talk openly about your feelings as a human being? Or your personal search for a goal and meaning in life? Could you describe your sensitivity, your anxieties, your defenses, and your desires? Could you talk openly about your ability to give and receive love? Your ability to collaborate and leave a personal mark here on this planet? If you had to use labels to describe yourself, as if you were filling out a form or a job application, your sense of personal sincerity and a purpose in life might be linked to things and events outside of you. You may see yourself as a statistical sheet rather than a special human being, and that very image may, in fact, be the reality that you have chosen for yourself. Total sincerity requires being able to identify yourself and identify your unique humanity. It means being able to answer the question, who am I? Without having to use stereotypical labels or statistical data. These 9 hypothetical questions will help you better control what you set out to do as a human being. Total self-sincerity is of the utmost importance if one wishes to have a clear vision of one's sense of purpose in life. Being honest with yourself has nothing to do with the number of lies you can tell in the course of the day. It depends on how much you know about yourself and how willing you are to confess all your barriers and shortcomings, your ability to look in the mirror and face yourself and see yourself as you are. The vilest form of self-deception is to pretend and then pretend that you are not pretending. If you pretend to others and give them a false image of yourself is one thing, it can be effective even for a time, but if you delude yourself, you will lack the sense of having a vital purpose, that your life has meaning, and you have something that can literally make it truly worthwhile. Having a sense of purpose in life is not the same as determining what to do each day. Rather, it is equivalent to sincerely giving yourself to living your days as you think you should. Many people ask me, how can I find out what I really want to do? The answer is something that most eludes them, because they want to pursue success rather than succeed according to their own inner feelings of purpose in life. Although it may seem elusive and even metaphysical, I believe that Nietzsche provided the best answer for these inquirers: he who has a reason to live, can bear almost anyhow. What can give you complete sincerity is not what you choose to do, but knowing that you are doing it because it corresponds to your personal idea of self-worth. Possessing that sense of mission in life is critically important to you if you want to become a limitless individual. 9. To take advantage of the time 100%. The unlimited individual is a winner 100% of the time. To always become a winner, you must accept the idea that for there to be winners, there must be no losers. Our culture is centered on the idea of creating achievers externally. That is, in an external world one has to defeat someone else or achieve some external goal to be considered the winner. But the she/no limits individual does not act according to the system in which most people find themselves hopelessly trapped. For a limitless individual, winning is an internal process. It is the ability to consider yourself a winner, because you operate based on internal signals, in almost all life situations. You do not have to defeat someone else to be a winner, and your idea of merit is not based on an external scale but on an internal scale. If you have to defeat an opponent to become a winner, you allow that opponent to determine his own vision of himself as a human being. The internally directed individual always refuses to label himself a failure just because someone else is more skilled than he is on any given day. The unlimited individual never forgets the reality of what it is to win and lose. The fact is, no one is better than another for more than a few minutes in a single day. The individual who is a world champion of something may, on any given day, be surpassed by many other individuals. If you accept this reality, you can begin to understand that if we use the external definition of what it is to win and lose, that is, to win you have to defeat another, and if you do not achieve you lose, there is no doubt that we are all losers every day of our lives. To become a limitless individual and stop considering yourself a failure, you have to overcome the win/lose dichotomy. If you don't forget that your inner attitude is always a matter of personal choice, you can begin to forge an always winning philosophy of all that you are without trying to fool yourself at all. The first step in creating that 100% winning attitude is to free yourself from the idea that people can simply be labeled winners and losers in particular competitions. The attitude of winning 100% allows, on the contrary, to always consider oneself a winner without thereby eliminating the possibilities of development and growth. You never have to engage in self-flagellation just because you have encountered an adversary who is more skilled than you on any given day. You cannot criticize yourself for failing to achieve a goal. You do not have to look at the other to determine your own level as a human being, nor do you have to use comparisons to determine your own merits. The fact is, everything you do in life gives you a chance to consider yourself a winner. You can learn from all experiences. And if you use your life experience to provide a stimulus to growth rather than as evidence of your shortcomings, you could be a 100% winner. Winning is actually an attitude, while defeating the opponent is something that you will be able to achieve some days and not others. I repeat that no one can always defeat another. It is simply impossible on a planet with millions and millions of inhabitants. But anyone can finish an activity as a winner, and also with the ability to become an even more competent individual in any particular field if they always maintain a firm inner winning attitude. What it has to do is radically abandon that negative pattern that so prevails in our culture, the attitude of highlighting the victory at the expense of the defeated always. It is absurd that there are winners at the expenses of losers. Our culture places a very high value on winning at the expense of others losing. In the business world, this is called upward mobility, and you always have to be on the lookout for the guy trying to get the job you want. In athletic competitions, young people go on the win at all costs diet, and the person who does not win is considered a failure. Colleges, with their insistence on grades and tests, label students as winners and losers. Books are written that explain how to succeed, to outsell others, to be number one, to psychologically defeat the adversary, and many other topics that focus on the external idea of being a winner. The limitless individual operates based on internal cues, as we have explained in other sections of this book. The idea of having to defeat another, or having to compare oneself with another, is a contradiction for the person who is structured according to internal principles. Consequently, the limitless individual looks to himself to determine whether or not he is a winner in life. Winning has nothing to do with defeating another, selling more, comparing yourself with others, with upward mobility, competitiveness, or any other external means of valuing yourself. The she/limitless individual understands how absurd it is to use another as an index to determine one's status. You can therefore undertake any activity and leave the experience as a winner. This is so because the individual, instead of relying on external criteria, decides for himself whether he has won or not. Thus, to win 100% of the time, you have to learn to maintain a winning attitude in everything that you undertake in life, instead of valuing yourself in any external way. The idea of never calling yourself a loser is something that deserves wide consideration if you really want to become a limitless individual. If we use some concrete pattern of comparison, all the inhabitants of this planet are losers almost always. Why would you want to label yourself in a negative and humiliating way all the time, and value yourself only in comparison to others? You are unique in the world. You know very well that no one else looks, acts, thinks, or feels exactly like you. If this is true, how can you be a loser just because you don't conform to certain uniform standards that we are intended to use as a benchmark? When you are a limitless person, there are no losers. There are people who have different abilities, interests, and instincts. Some people decide to compete with others, but that does not mean that when you score fewer points or fail to score goals you have failed. In reality, all he wants to say is that he has scored no goals or has scored less than his opponent. You may want to work to become more effective at kicking a ball, but you don't have to label yourself a loser in the training period. After all, when you lose a game, what have you really lost? Absolutely nothing. His life remains the same, you still have those higher values and needs, the desire to create your own truth, and everything else that goes along with a fully functioning personality. The only thing that happens is that you have underperformed your opponent on a given day. Nothing more. The same thing happens when you pursue a goal you have set for yourself and fail to achieve it. You are not a failure as an individual simply because you have not achieved a goal. All you have to do is learn from the experience and move on to something else. To learn, you have to fail sometimes. Anyone who has accomplished something has experienced a remarkable share of failure. But you don't have to ever label yourself a failure for it. When you consider yourself a failure, you judge yourself in negative terms. When this happens, you are condemned to the absurdity that you are a failure in life. All that process of labeling himself as a failure prevents him from growing and maturing, and for the individual she operating from a position that allows to develop, mature, and grow is the very essence of life. On one occasion, Thomas Edison was asked what it meant to him to be a failure after 25,000 failed attempts to invent a battery. Your answer is of significant interest to all of us. Failure? I am by no means a failure. Now I know 25,000 ways not to make a battery. Anything that allows you to continue maturing and growing does not have to be avoided, and considering yourself a failure is the biggest obstacle you can put to your ability to make positive choices. Your ability to be a 100% winner is thus based on abandoning the idea that losing at something is equivalent to being a loser. If you think of yourself as a loser just because you haven't achieved something yet, you will never be able to invent anything. It is not simply a game that I ask you to play with yourself, still less an invitation to delude yourself by calling yourself a winner when you are not. I ask that you completely reverse the win/lose idea in your thinking, transcend this negative dichotomy and try to think that you are what you decide for yourself, rather than having to measure yourself by external standards. Whatever you choose to do, you can approach it from the position of maintaining a winning attitude. I mean everything. You don't have to consider yourself a loser again, regardless of your intelligence, ability, hobbies, talent, or anything else. Being internal and consulting from a position of self-esteem is what really distinguishes winners from those who consider themselves losers. Reality tells us that there is no such thing as number one. There is always another team, another individual, another goal beyond our current level. The 4 minutes per mile was a barrier that, just 25 years ago, we believed would never be exceeded, and now we are talking about 3 minutes per mile in the future. Is everyone who did a mile in 4 minutes a few years ago a loser today? No human being should ever consider himself a loser. Any behavior aimed at convincing others that they are failures is negative for everyone involved. The key to progress is hope, not disappointment. Cooperation, not rivalry, is what increases efficiency rates in most human endeavors. The key to internal and external success is internal pride and not mortification. The keys to functioning successfully in almost all activities are to be relaxed, at peace with yourself, confident, emotionally balanced, free, and loose. Trying out, playing a decisive soccer game, giving a speech, whatever is considered stressful is best done with inner peace. And yelling, scolding, prodding, flattering, punishing, or belittling will generally produce nothing more than tension, and consequently more failure. The more at peace you are with yourself, and the more you allow yourself to enjoy an activity, the more likely you are to be able to do it at a higher level, and, of course, with that kind of inner attitude you will never fall low enough to rate yourself, or any other human being, with such an unworthy label as loser. The process to become a 100 for 100 winner. To become a perpetual winner in life you have to go through a process that forces the individual to overcome many of their normal ways of functioning. Until now they have conditioned him to think according to dichotomies and to use the technique of labeling to describe himself. That is, they have taught you to compartmentalize rather than to think. At school and at university, they encouraged him to arrange names, facts, ideas, and problems according to categories. They encouraged him to memorize facts so that he could repeat them. They taught him that there were right and wrong answers to everything in life. If he did a problem well, he received a reward; if he did it wrong, a punishment. Consequently, he was taught to avoid the kind of thinking that I advocate throughout the pages of this book. They would hardly teach him that internal thinking was a valuable ingredient in life. In fact, they were telling you the opposite: learn the facts correctly and forget about thinking for yourself. Life is divided into truths and mistakes, and your task is to seek the truths and avoid mistakes. They explained that a poem could only be interpreted in a certain way, or that Ernest Hemingway was thinking about something very specific when he wrote his novels, and that the objective was to discover his hidden intentions. They told him to look for the answer in each subject area that would satisfy the external authority, to pass the corresponding course, and to forget his personal ideas about things. Education meant adapting, behaving, memorizing, passing tests, forgetting, and then gorging yourself again for the final exam, and then forgetting forever all the information you learned. And this same kind of rigid approach to learning applied to virtually all of his life experiences. They taught you that in this world there were winners and losers, and that if you played soccer, the winning team was the one that scored the most goals. Thus began to equate being a winner with scoring more goals, or with some other type of external activity. His coaches warned and reprimanded him for his lack of integrity when he missed a play or underperformed others. They forced him to be a champion and never allowed him the luxury of simply enjoying an activity. They always told him, on the contrary, that he should try his best, in everything, although this type of mentality leads to ulcers, depression, and self-reproach. They did not encourage him to simply do, to enjoy, to pursue his own truths. His training focused, on the contrary, on external rewards, such as school grades, competitive activities, and learning how to earn money in order to be happy. Most of his education was devoted to teaching him to compartmentalize himself and to use external measures to determine how worthwhile and meaningful he could be as a human being. Winning 100% means introducing some spectacular changes in your life, changes based solely on common sense and personal fidelity to your inner values. It is clear that always trying your best and in everything will exhaust you and prevent you from achieving perfection in any field of life. You know you can't be better than everyone else, so why constantly use someone else as an index of your own worth or ability? You know, if you look at the facts, that in any competitive activity even the most talented individuals in a given field are bound to lose almost as often as they win. So why should anyone consider themselves a loser when it comes to the inevitable? Think that you cannot win everyone else all the time, and if this is true, why not admit it and start ruling your life by internal stimuli rather than external ones? You know very well that there is nothing in life that is always quite one or the other, that every problem has several possible solutions, and that nothing is ever solved by the simple procedure of labeling it. You know that all people have dignity and worth, no matter how many mistakes they make, and yet those same common-sense ideas are forgotten by many as they tirelessly pretend to win and label themselves and others as losers almost every day of business. His life. This book is about a new way to focus on yourself and to focus on all activities. To cultivate that self that wins 100% of the time, you must adopt 1, a new way of thinking that leads to 2, new feelings, and 3, new behaviors. If you are interested in changing something about yourself, you have to go through this 3-piece staircase so that the change becomes a permanent and unalterable part of your new self without limits. The process is the following. 1. To think like a 100% winner. You are responsible for the thoughts in your head. You have the possibility to think what you want, and almost all your negative attitudes and behaviors are born of how you decide to think. Your thoughts are your personal responsibility, and once you accept this as a fundamental part of your total humanity, you are in a position to change everything about yourself that you dislike. Emotions don't just come about. Actions are not produced by the good. All your feelings and actions are preceded by mental processes called thoughts, and no one can make you think something that you don't want to think. Your piece of freedom, even when others are manipulating or imprisoning you, is that ability to choose the ideas and thoughts that are inside your head. As soon as you understand that your emotions and behaviors come directly from your thinking, you will understand at the same time that to deal with a personal problem, the first thing you will have to address will be the thoughts that support your negative emotions and behaviors. You know perfectly well that you control your thoughts and that if you want to become a limitless individual, you basically have to try to learn to think differently from how you have been taught to think. Attitudes are just thoughts, and the first step to my 100% winning lifestyle is not forgetting that you can choose any attitude you want, and in virtually any circumstance. You will be able to become a 100% winner if you decide to think like a winner and try to eradicate the images of a loser that you may carry from an earlier period of your life. Thinking like a winner means not always having to defeat others. It means being able to overcome a situation in which you fail in your attempt to achieve a goal. It involves not demanding perfection in everything you do, but, on the contrary, considering yourself perfect, perfectible and, consequently, capable of progress and development. It means not forgetting that perfection does not mean always staying the same. It means being able to allow yourself to progress and grow. Thinking like a winner means not blaming yourself. It means refusing to admit self-deprecating thoughts. It involves rejecting the tendency to value yourself in comparison to others, and giving permission to be the unique individual that you are. All thoughts that contribute to creating yourself a loser are easier to reject when viewed as choices. As soon as you take responsibility for those thoughts, you can decide to turn them into positive thoughts. If you play a tennis match against a strong opponent and you are defeated, you will only be a loser if you think so. In reality, each of the defeats you may suffer is something that strengthens your character and improves your ability. You could conclude the game by saying that you have learned a few things, that you already know what plays to practice, and that it has been a wonderful experience to play against such a good opponent. Choosing the exact opposite is something that is at your disposal without a doubt. You can get irritated, drop your racket, rage at yourself, call yourself useless, and obsess over the fact that you have lost. Whatever you choose, reality will remain as it is. You have not managed to return the ball over the net as many times as your opponent, anyway, and that will always be true in every game you lose. But how you are going to think, what you are going to do when you lose, and how you are going to place that loss in the rational framework of your life are up to you. A consistent winner knows that you progress and grow through defeats as well as through victories, and that there is nothing in life that justifies you torture yourself. 2. To feel like a 100% winner. If your feelings come directly from your thoughts, and you know that you can choose your thoughts, it seems logical to say that you can also decide what you are going to feel. Emotions are not big secrets, they are the psychological results of your thoughts, and there is nothing automatic in deciding how emotional you want to be. Any emotion of a functional nature that helps you, that is pleasant, and that is something you want to lean on, you can reach with your will. It is absurd to pretend that we cannot help feeling the way we feel, that our emotions simply fall on us and that we have no control over them, that we cannot really avoid being who we are from an emotional point of view. The unlimited individual can be very emotional, but he is not an individual who is immobilized by his emotions. Learning to control and take responsibility for personal emotions, instead of blaming a mysterious unconscious or an old experience as the source of your emotions today, is the means of achieving autonomy and personal freedom in life. Understanding anger as a choice rather than something that simply happens to you will allow you to eliminate it when it immobilizes you or when it immobilizes others. If you just accept the idea that you can't help being the way you are and that your emotions just happen, there is clearly nothing you can do to change them when they interfere with your life. There is something fundamentally reasonable about taking responsibility for what one is going to feel rather than just leaving it to chance or a genetic system based on the random distribution of emotional traits. The 100% winner is the one who decides to strive not to feel depressed, traumatized, angry, guilty, unnecessarily scared, not to reject himself or not feel distressed in reaction to life experiences and problems. In a competition between you and an opponent, it will be your emotional state that determines your effectiveness. The more tense you are, the more you will cause the competition to have life and death consequences, the more you will become irritated with yourself and the more tension you will feel and the less chance you will have of being victorious from that experience. Those emotional reactions that lead to passivity and immobilization arise directly from what you think at the moment. When you push or rekindle something that has already been killed, when you get angry with yourself or your opponent or increase your tension by making mental threats, you decide to feel like a loser. The more tense you are as a result of those thoughts, the more likely you are to feel worse and worse, until, finally, you are so distressed that you give up. The same kind of emotional reaction is possible when you go for a college exam, or a job interview, or any other test that may be tough and difficult. The more unnatural you are, the more you begin to judge yourself in negative terms, and the more you tend to judge yourself at the time of the activity, the more likely you are to choose negative emotions that are an obstacle and prevent you from being effective, then qualify based on the result. Instead of focusing on how well you have done and what you have learned, you will again consider yourself a loser and then feel like a loser. Always feeling like a winner is possible even in the worst moments or in the most disappointing situations. Your emotional reaction to all of life's activities and to all of your individual endeavors is entirely up to you and how you decide to think. The she/limitless individual seems to understand that feeling bad and depressed means wasting those precious moments that he spends in this life and, consequently, there is no situation for him that deserves to be paralyzed and filled with anguish. What the unlimited individual does when faced with a problem is to act, while the negative tactic is to sit back and feel bad. When one engages in active action instead of continually thinking and evaluating his performance, especially in comparison with others, he is too involved in life to have negative emotional reactions. Inert, lazy, and uncontrolled individuals are generally the ones who have time for all these mental self-accusations and self-pity that leads to negative emotional reactions. The 100% winner is so excited by acting and feeling able to enjoy the present moment, they don't even have time to feed a loser mentality. Decision, yes. Quickly and painlessly expressing one's frustration, yes. But continually indulging in self-blame, anger, depression, etc., is unseemly for a 100% winner. 3. To act like a 100% winner. Your performances as a 100% winner will come automatically when you are convinced that you can actually change your mind to a total winner philosophy by being the only one to determine what you decide to think. Then you will accept the idea that your emotions do not have to be barriers that prevent you from achieving your unlimited goals, because you are usually the ruler of your feelings too. It will automatically begin to act in a way that fosters that 100% winning self-image. You will calm down, stop struggling, allow your body to do what it knows how to do by virtue of your experience and learning, and you will emerge triumphant from all the trials of your life. The whole obsession of our culture with the triumph belongs almost exclusively to the kind of competitive triumph, of defeating another, and of accumulating external values. There is no doubt that this way of winning is 100% impossible, because no one can always be better than everyone else. In fact, chasing this kind of win at all costs will result in you not winning even 5% of the time. If you are always looking out of the corner of your eye to see how the other is doing and to be able to determine if you are the one who wins or if you need another person to compare yourself to or to defeat, and even to surpass, you depend on external elements to help you. Your triumph. In such circumstances, you will hardly be successful. You will waste almost every present moment chasing the other, and you will almost always be a loser by definition. 100% winning behaviors can be practiced in almost every experience and activity in life. They flow directly from your winning attitudes, and you may find yourself winning in situations where almost everyone chooses to be crazy. In addition, his attitude soon becomes contagious and prevails in all areas. When you begin to be an individual who appreciates life, for example, you become someone who understands that you can learn from adversity. Thus, if you are going through a particularly hard period, for example a decrease in income, an illness, a death in the family, or even minor difficulties such as a traffic jam or a long queue. That ability to appreciate every moment and live it fully allows you to overcome the loser attitude that previously immobilized and disturbed you for long periods. You start looking for something beneficial in difficult situations rather than letting circumstances defeat you. Before long, even in tough competitive games or at work, you are looking for something to learn rather than something to complain about. He begins to take risks and to rehearse new behaviors that he previously rejected, because he is no longer afraid of losing. The fruit of a winning attitude basically comes down to this: the limitless status that I have talked about throughout this book. These critical situations from everyday life that I list below are typical examples of a 100% winner performing. In your job, you don't have to get into the upward mobility trap. In fact, the less you worry about getting promoted, the better you can function effectively in the present and, ironically, the more likely you are to get promoted. Those who just do their jobs, who enjoy what they are doing, and who live from day to day are the ones who can be the most productive and those who can accumulate the most merits for promotion. The more human you are to others and to yourself, the more your leadership services will be valued. But if you are always striving continually to stand out, hitting the jackpot, a nervous wreck from the obsession of the future, he will never be able to have the winning attitude of the SZK individual. I have been interviewed regarding job offers several times in my life. In all these interviews, my attitude was the following: if I am just myself, if I do not pretend or cheat in anything, in addition to showing that I can survive perfectly without that job, I will convey exactly the image that I want them to have of me. The less I tried to impress my interviewers, the more capable I was of just being myself. I always managed to win, even when I didn't get the job. When I look back at those jobs that I almost got, I realize they weren't right for me then and they aren't right for me now. From all those interviews I learned important things, and I always came out of them feeling like a winner. Why? Because I didn't need a specific job to feel satisfied with myself. The experience seemed valuable to me. I tested myself in a tense situation and learned something from the experience. You can feel like a winner in any relationship you have with your bosses or with your coworkers. You can approach a supervisor from the position of knowing that you are a great person, regardless of how things turn out. You can come out of that interview having learned things that will help you be more effective in future similar interviews, with your dignity intact, primarily because you haven't put it on the line. You can approach your work as something that you chose to do. If you're going to have to do it again today, you'll enjoy your career choice and grow with it, today. If you no longer want to make that choice, or are willing to take the risks of making new career choices, you can grow in a new career direction. The 100% winner attitude at work demands not placing your personal dignity or merit or sense of purpose in life in the extreme mold of doing a job, but operating from a perspective of inner self-appreciation. If you reverse the process of justifying your merit for work and move on to doing it from the inside out, you drop the question of needing a particular job. As soon as you no longer need, you are free to do so by choice. If you are honest enough with yourself to admit that you are no longer satisfied with your work, and you have eliminated that need, you can do what you choose and earn a living. The key ingredient of a no-limits attitude at work is the ability to approach any problem or task from the perspective of actualizing oneself. The creative individual dedicates himself to his work and does not limit himself to performing tasks for a salary. If you do not dedicate yourself to your work and update yourself in what you do, you must start doing it with the attitude of being able to learn and grow every day. In your personal relationships, you can approach all your personal relationships with a 100% winner attitude if you decide to be a limitless person in this field. That means forgetting about the problem you have with your loved ones and, instead of holding on to it, accepting them today for who they are. It means rejecting those attempts of yours to manipulate them, to make them more like you, and to replace them with acceptance on a daily basis. It means trying hard not to upset things in your relationships. Winner relationships work because each member of the alliance is willing to just accept the other person as they are, and everyone treats each other from a caring point of view. If you just look at your wife, children, friends, or acquaintances with an attitude of total appreciation for who they are, you will never be a loser in love again. When you only convey affection in a relationship and you only develop and grow with it, you cannot lose. When I'm about to say something that might be unkind or complain about my daughter, I constantly say to myself, do you really want the relationship to be based on petty disputes and hostility? If you really appreciated it, you wouldn't give as much importance to those small discrepancies. As soon as I remind myself that I am a meaningful and dignified human being with feelings of my own, and I don't really want to remove any of that dignity, I generally find a more effective and productive way to voice my grievances. What is certain is that when I really try not to be overly critical or pushy, complaining or doing anything else that creates hostility in a relationship, I usually curb that behavior. On the other hand, when I realize that someone I love is getting tiresome, instead of embarking on a long dispute over that attitude that I dislike, I just state my point of view and walk away from the possible eruption. After a cooling down period, one can put an end to almost all discrepancies. By striving to eliminate the tense points in a relationship, and by cultivating a vigorous sense of appreciation of the other person's worth, your relationships can also be 100% winner. In a healthy community, old family struggles don't appear. You can stop all these abuses by adopting a winning attitude towards all the people who are important to you. Of course, you will never have complete unanimity on all things, but disagreements do not mean that you have to be unpleasant. In academic activities, if your reasons for studying are external and not internal, you will always prefer to pass the course the easy way, you will seek the approval of the professor and the high marks in the exams. He who is always a winner knows that studying is a completely internal matter, that learning for the sheer joy it provides, because it brings us closer to our own truth, to beauty, to truly appreciate life, is reason enough to seek knowledge. If you are immune to pressure from others to get you to study, if you join any learning experience because you want to, you have a good chance of being a 100% winner in that field. These titles are virtually meaningless, although many outsiders convince you that you should get them. In fact, you will progress and enjoy life according to what you are capable of when you are out there in that external world, not in the archives of a school. When it comes to your honors, they are nothing but useless badges of merit, and you must either produce or get out of the way and let someone else do what needs to be done. Whenever I have appeared on television or have spoken to audiences around the world, I have never had a prospective host or businessman ask me what grade I got in psychology. People don't care about those things, or they shouldn't. You will get there by being confident in yourself and what you do, not by what you did to get a diploma. As many young people are considered failures if they have mediocre academic records, it is important to make them understand that their merit has nothing to do with those grades, that they can fail a course and be a winner, if they think like unlimited people. You can learn from everything you do in life. Others will sometimes value you critically, and sometimes you won't make it to the top, but if you convince yourself that you got something valuable out of the experience, you are a winner. In sports competitions, it is in this field that the winner/failure mentality most emerges in our culture. I have written about that attitude in other sections of this book, and by now you know that I support the idea of approaching any sporting activity from the perspective of joy, inner peace, and fun. There is no doubt that it is important to compete in any athletic event, but there is no reason to accept loser images if you are competing with a superior opponent. If you play for yourself, to improve your ability, to reach the level that you consider satisfactory, to feel relaxed and free of tension and to end the incessant comparison with others, you can become a 100% winner in any company. Athletic. If you are an internal winner, who is in control of yourself and knows why you are in the game, you will, ironically, win more victories than if you constantly fought to win, if you demanded, if you were angry, if you were tense. The relaxed, peaceful individual who simply lets his body function as he has trained it to perform is the type of athlete who is not only a winner on the field of athletic competition, but in all fields. All of these categories, along with others that we have mentioned in this book, such as parent-child relationships, sexual relationships, travel, hobbies, management activities, etc., are things in which you can be a 100% winner. If you approach an interview with inner confidence and self-knowledge, you cannot lose, regardless of what others may say. You may read in the newspaper that I have lost, or your friends may label you a failure, but in reality you will never be a loser unless you decide to label yourself. And the label you decide to wear is entirely up to you. Learning to ignore the opinions and criticisms of others and learning to consult your own internal signals is undoubtedly the basis for becoming a 100% winner. No one is ever going to convince such a person that they are a loser. You may make mistakes, you may appear stupid, you may be miserably defeated in any endeavor, you may never sell another book or appear on a bestseller or earn a penny again in life, but you will always be a winner, because you decide. Consider yourself a winner. And any mistakes you may make are just one more tool that can help you build an even more effective life for yourself. With that kind of attitude you can never be a failure in front of yourself, and that is what living without limits consists of, being a winner before yourself. I have talked very extensively about boundless individuals, normal people, and neurotic or depressed people throughout the pages of this book. I know that being a limitless individual means being able to overcome the typical attitudes and behaviors that others are willing to conform to. There is a way of going beyond that people without limits choose, that others never even take into consideration. If you begin to consider going beyond what has always gone, or thinking in a new way, a way that can give you a true sense of purpose in life, you will have achieved the goal that I set for myself when I started writing this book. You have a real chance of learning to overcome that typical self that you have accepted so far and of becoming your own fortress of greatness. As a 100% winner, you must consider yourself an end rather than a means to an end. Consider yourself a well-rounded individual, someone who has intrinsic value just because he exists, rather than having to be shown to have value and merit through triumphs and acquisitions. As long as you can develop and grow and become, if you choose, someone else, you can still see yourself as complete and worthy just as you are. It is not a contradiction to be able to grow and change in the future and still be complete and perfect now. Also, you can see others as they are, rather than as they should be. Instead of always reminding others of what they should become, try to see them whole now. Your ability to be a limitless person and to go beyond even the most fantastic expectations you have ever raised is in your hands. Don't hesitate. I believe in it as deeply and sincerely as in the other things that I have said or written. It is all about whether you are willing to make a positive choice more often than a negative and even normal choice. I have included everything in this book. I can't say anything more. If you just read it, you won't get anything. It will only be a guide. What I do guarantee is that you will feel a greater personal inner peace as a human being if you opt for the limitless attitudes that I have described in these pages. If you want to do it today, and if you see others pursuing their own limitless status, do as Diogenes said to Alexander the Great, retreat, and don't take the sun away from them. And the sky is the limit. Wayne Dyer.